The morning sun bathes the grand estate in light, signaling the start of a pivotal day within the mansion. Warm sunlight and a gentle breeze filter through the window as a black-haired woman stretches comfortably in her bed. She wakes feeling unusually refreshed, possessed by the sudden conviction that today, everything in life will finally go her way.
Dressed in a sophisticated purple gown, the black-haired lady moves with purpose past her bowing household staff.
In the quiet of a lavish office, she sits across from the blonde-haired Uklid, who appears somber and incredibly tense. The blonde-haired man, Uklid, breaks the silence by unexpectedly requesting a divorce from his stunned wife, Evgenia Rudion. A soft tap sounds as she sets her teacup down with a heavy sigh, processing his shocking legal demand. Uklid flinches under her intense gaze, his green eyes filled with visible anxiety as he awaits her inevitable reaction.
Evgenia reminds herself to soften her stern expression, realizing that her cold aura is genuinely scaring the poor man.
Maintaining her composure, the black-haired woman asks him if he truly intends to end their marriage so abruptly.
Sitting with her arms crossed, she tells him that she is actually quite generous when it comes to white lies.
She flashes a radiant, intimidating smile, asking him to answer again while keeping her supposedly generous nature in mind. Uklid remains silent, his head bowed as he struggles to find the words to respond to her terrifying charm. He places a firm hand on the document, confirming his resolve and revealing that the paperwork is already signed. A wave of genuine shock washes over the black-haired woman as she realizes he is serious about leaving her. She clutches the papers, stunned that her husband had the foresight and courage to prepare the legal documents in advance. Examining the sheet, she recognizes his elegant handwriting and realizes Uklid has already committed to the separation. Her thoughts race in disbelief as she grapples with the suddenness of his desire to part ways forever. Uklid stands and politely requests that she review the terms carefully, maintaining a formal and distant demeanor toward her. Her eyes narrow with sharp determination, deciding then and there that she has no intention of letting him go. With a decisive, swift motion, she tears the divorce papers in half right before his wide, startled eyes. She flatly rejects his proposal and commands him to return to his room, asserting her absolute dominance over the situation. She sweeps out of the room while a frantic Uklid pleads for her to wait, his composure completely shattered. Standing in the hallway, she reflects on how her usual emotional responses have vanished, replaced by an icy, unwavering calm. A realization dawns as she recognizes her situation. She has somehow ended up living inside the world of a novel. She looks down at her elegant purple dress, beginning to understand the role she now occupies in this literary world. In her previous life, she was a lucky baby, surrounded by a supernatural abundance of wealth and financial fortune. Her father's career soared after her birth, but his arrogance drove her mother to take her and leave home. They moved to the city, leaving behind the man who had become unrecognizable through his newfound power and greed. Desperate and drowning in debt, her father eventually returned, begging for a second chance to be a family again. Upon their return, his business miraculously flourished once more, as if her presence alone guaranteed his immense success. Relatives who once mocked him soon scrambled for a piece of the vast wealth that seemed to follow her. Tragic accidents claimed her parents and grandmother, leaving her alone with a massive inheritance as she entered adulthood. Standing before the city skyline, the modern woman acknowledges her incredible, yet lonely, luck with money and investments. Her life became a blur of winning lottery tickets and skyrocketing stocks until she had more wealth than purpose. Surrounded by shadows of greedy people, she realized that everyone around her only cared about her overflowing bank accounts. Sinking into a deep distrust of others, she abandoned the idea of dating, finding comfort only in her digital world. She found solace in binge reading a popular web novel titled The Saint's Dangerous Choice on her mobile phone. Lying in her pajamas, she became obsessed with Uklid, declaring the minor character to be her favorite future. The novel followed Melissa, a saint caught in a reverse harem battle between a prince, a priest, and an assassin. Among all the dangerous main leads, she fell head over heels for the gentle and overlooked Uklid Rudion. She lamented that her beloved favorite was barely a side character, existing on the same narrative level as a houseplant. A sob breaks through as she cries on her sofa, frustrated that others fail to see Uklid's true worth. Despite her talent for picking winning stocks, she joked about her terrible luck in choosing such minor, unappreciated characters. She treasured the single illustration of Uklid, moved by the deep sadness visible in his gentle, longing eyes. Desperate for more content, she emailed the author, offering to pay any price for a story focused on Uklid. While relaxing in her pajamas, a sudden blinding flash from her phone signals an immediate and mysterious reply. She wakes up sitting in a dark, opulent bedroom, wondering if she had simply dozed off while reading her phone. The black-haired woman stands in a daze, realizing she is in a lavish place she has never seen before. Looking into the mirror, she is shocked to find the stunning face of Evgenia Rudion staring back at her. Looking into the mirror, the black-haired woman is horrified by her sharp, villainous face and striking violet eyes. A decorative portrait identifies her as the villainess from the novel who eventually divorces the gentle Uklid. Panicked and confused, Evgenia Rudion clutches her bandaged head, struggling to comprehend how she possessed this body. She recalls receiving a mysterious email from the author before being swallowed by a blinding flash of light. As a sudden, quick knock sounds, the woman hides under her covers, wondering if she actually died. Trembling with nerves, the black-haired woman looks up and cautiously asks who is at her door. A young maid with brown hair and golden eyes enters the room carrying a formal tea service. The maid gasps in delight that her lady is awake, while Evgenia asks for her identity in confusion. Startled, the brown-haired maid identifies herself as Anne, deeply concerned that her lady does not recognize her. Evgenia realizes this girl is the protagonist's right-hand maid, confirming that the novel has become her new reality. Anne rushes to steady the swaying woman, pleading with her not to overexert herself during her recovery. Her eyes narrow with sharp focus as she attempts to determine the exact timeline of the current events. Anne flinches in terror as Evgenia flashes a dark, menacing smile while lost in her own private thoughts. An illustration of a grand wedding flashes through her mind, depicting the union between her and golden-haired Uklid. Her eyes sparkle with pure adoration as she clasps her hands, overjoyed to be near her favorite character. She envisions the gentle Uklid smiling warmly with a bird on his finger, the very image of kindness. In her past life, she was such a dedicated fan that she even commissioned custom merchandise of him. Sparkles surround the black-haired woman as she celebrates her incredible luck in marrying her ultimate favorite character. Her excitement vanishes instantly as she remembers that the original story concludes with their inevitable messy divorce. With a determined look, she vows to use her knowledge to change the narrative and save her marriage. Reflecting on her previous life of endless work, she views this as a once-in-a-lifetime chance for true happiness. A beautiful vision of their wedding day fuels her resolve to keep Uklid by her side forever. Sinking into deep thought, she decides that her first priority must be identifying the current point in time.
Evgenia asks Anne about the cause of her head injury, leaving the maid shocked by her memory loss.
Anne reports that the Crown Prince recently sent a proposal letter to the novel's main heroine, Melissa, She realizes that the story is still in its early stages, before her character begins tormenting poor Melissa. Anne hesitates, explaining that hearing the news of the prince's letter caused the lady to react quite violently. The maid reveals that Evgenia was so enraged that she actually slammed her head into a stone wall. Horrified, the black-haired woman realizes the original Villainess was far more reckless and unhinged than she ever imagined. She clutches her face in shame, wondering how she will ever live down such an embarrassing public outburst. Imagining the scene of her own tantrum, she laments the impulsive and self-destructive nature of the original Evgenia. She realizes that her terrible reputation might actually help her get the crown prince to despise her completely. Standing up with renewed purpose, the black-haired woman announces her immediate intention to speak with the duke. She heads for the door to renounce her obsession with the prince, ignoring Anne's frantic pleas to wait. A sharp, metallic clank sounds as guards cross their spears, blocking her exit with a threatening, sudden motion. The woman freezes in place, her face turning pale with absolute terror as she stares at the blades. She collapses in fear, covering her eyes while Anne furiously demands the guards lower their weapons immediately. Evgenia realizes her severe ichnophobia from her previous life has unfortunately followed her into this new world. Her eyes widen in realization as she processes the guard's statement about her not being allowed to leave. The sight of the armed guards flanking her bedroom door confirms her suspicion that she is being confined. Anne apologizes for her silence, explaining that the Duke ordered her to be placed under strict, immediate discipline. Sitting on her bed, Evgenia calmly requests that Anne arrange a formal audience with her father regardless. Anne is stunned by the word father, as the original lady never referred to the Duke so affectionately. Evgenia scoffs at the Duke's absence, noting he hasn't even visited her since she collapsed from her injury. Anne desperately attempts to defend the Duke, insisting that he was actually quite shaken by the lady's accident. Her expression remains icy as Anne explains that the Duke had to leave for the north on business. The maid's mention of the person in the basement causes a sudden, chilling shift in the room's atmosphere. Sitting alone in the dark room, Evgenia ponders the identity of the mysterious individual hidden away downstairs. Anne reveals that Melissa has been secretly visiting the basement prisoner to provide him with food and care. The black-haired woman looks away in shock as Anne admits to knowingly ignoring Melissa's secret, forbidden actions. Panic strikes as she suddenly remembers the mysterious prisoner still locked deep within the mansion's basement. Abandoning her recovery, she urgently commands Anne to fetch a rope for her secret mission. A sudden, sharp snatch sounds as she grips the rope, determined to escape her room. With Anne's terrified assistance, she clumsily scales down the mansion walls under the cover of night. While Chibi Anne wails in concern, Chibi Evgenia offers a confident smile and promises a swift return. A sudden, sharp clack of her high heel sounds against the stone, highlighting her stubborn commitment to fashion. She carefully adjusts her footing, praying that she hasn't already committed irreversible atrocities against the prisoner. Landing with a soft thud, she stands alone in the moonlight, determined to fix the story's trajectory. She wipes sweat from her brow, finding strength in her dream of eventually marrying her favorite character. Anne waves frantically from the balcony, her voice echoing with desperate pleas for her lady to remain safe. A sudden, cold breeze causes her to shiver as she navigates the silent, moonlit grounds toward the annex. The scene shifts to the imposing annex building, its dark windows hiding the secrets of the dungeon below. Standing before the looming structure, she notes that the current guard patrol timing is perfectly in her favor. Hiding behind a tree, she gasps in panic, terrified the prisoner might have escaped before she could intervene. She recalls Melissa, the novel's gentle blonde heroine, whose kindness sets the entire plot into motion. Memories of Melissa secretly providing food and medicine to the captive Richard flash through her mind. She laments her timing, wishing she had possessed Evgenia earlier to prevent the suffering Richard endured. A metallic creak sounds as she reaches for the door, determined to change Richard's dark fate. Descending into the shadows, she reflects on how Melissa's compassion unknowingly triggered Richard's future obsession. Her footsteps echo through the cold stone corridor of the dungeon as she searches for a specific cell. She stops abruptly before the iron bars, her heart racing as she gazes into the dark prison cell. A wave of relief washes over her as she confirms that Richard has not yet fled his confinement. Chained and weary, the pink-haired Richard sits on the floor, his striking red eyes filled with silent exhaustion. She stares at his face, moved by the visible pain and loneliness etched into his handsome features. She envisions Richard as he should be, a grand figure of power and nobility, far from these chains.
System notes reveal that Richard is the story's most dangerous lead, a man with twisted, stunted emotions.
She remembers how Melissa's secret gifts of bread became the only source of warmth in Richard's cold life. This simple act of kindness was the catalyst that taught the broken man the meaning of love. The vision shifts to a darker future, where Richard's gratitude transforms into a terrifying, vengeful obsession. Richard's piercing gaze promises a future of kidnap and imprisonment if the original story remains unchanged. Gazing at the real Richard, she is struck by how he exceeds every illustration in beauty and presence. She stands before the bars, admiring his baby deer eyes and understanding why readers adored him so much. Richard looks up with a start, his red eyes reflecting genuine concern for her instead of expected hatred. Confused by his gentle reaction, she wonders why the man she supposedly tortured seems worried about her. An intense close-up reveals his vibrant red eyes staring directly at her like she is his greatest enemy. She breathes a sigh of relief upon seeing his eyes are still intact, unharmed by the original Villainess. Horrific memories surface of the original Evgenia planning to gouge out Richard's eyes in a fit of rage. Steeling her resolve, she decides to free him now to prevent the monster he is destined to become. She notices a mysterious red mark on the back of his hand as he grips the prison bars. Reaching out, she hesitates, terrified that releasing him might only lead to her own swift and certain death. She touches the magic bracelet Anne provided, a small comfort against the danger she is about to face. Richard stares up at her from the shadows, his expression unreadable behind his messy pink hair. With a sharp, authoritative tone, she commands the prisoner to step out from his dark cell. She presents a heavy iron ring of keys, instructing Richard to finally unlock his own shackles. A sudden metallic clink sounds as the keys slip from her hands, landing near Richard's feet. Chibi Evgenia recoils in horror, realizing her accidental harshness makes her seem like the original Villainess. Richard remains eerily silent, his face obscured by shadow as he processes her unexpected offer of freedom. A sharp, heavy clack echoes through the cell as Richard begins the process of unlocking his chains. While he works on the shackles, she decides to search for any belongings he might have had. She moves toward a nearby wooden box, hoping to restore more than just his physical freedom. Checking a wooden chest, Evgenia successfully finds a set of clothes and confirms she has unlocked Richard's shackles. Chibi Evgenia forcefully shoves the clothes and a heavy pouch at Chibi Richard, insisting he take them all. Now dressed in a dark traveling cloak, Richard holds the pouch of gold while Evgenia celebrates her successful mission. Evgenia looks Richard in the eye, firmly telling the pink-haired boy that he is finally a free man. Richard flinches in shock as the lady bluntly commands him to go, her tone unexpectedly harsh and final. Confused by Richard's distressed expression, Evgenia wonders if the boy expects a formal apology for his past suffering. Standing before the bars of his cell, the black-haired woman offers a sincere apology for everything the original Villainess did.
She acknowledges that her sudden change of heart probably sounds suspicious and utterly ridiculous to the traumatized prisoner.
Richard stares at her, stunned, as she expresses genuine remorse for buying him and locking him in the basement. A sudden, sharp clink sounds as Richard grips the pouch, which Evgenia explains contains enough gold and jewels for him. She encourages him to use the money to settle down comfortably elsewhere, away from the cruelty of this mansion.
Evgenia offers a gentle smile, reaffirming that Richard is truly free to leave his dark past behind forever.
Gripping the pouch with his marked hand, Richard remains silent while Evgenia worries about providing him with medicine later. The pink-haired boy looks away, his voice trembling as he asks why he is being forced to leave. Tears stream down Richard's face as he desperately begs the lady to let him stay by her side.
Evgenia is completely bewildered when the prisoner suddenly collapses to his knees, crying out for her in desperation.
Sobbing, Richard asks if he is being thrown out because he failed to address her as his master. His hands shake as he clutches at her dress, terrified that he is being discarded like a broken tool. Crying hysterically, Richard admits to his supposed mistakes and pleads with Evgenia not to abandon him in the night. Looking at the weeping boy, she reflects that Richard is only 18, far younger and more vulnerable than expected. She realizes that for someone raised as a slave, the prospect of freedom feels more like a cruel rejection. Richard continues to cry for a long time until Evgenia's silence finally forces him to accept her decision. Resigned and broken, the boy finally turns and walks alone through the moonlit trees away from the dungeon annex. Watching his retreating figure, Evgenia feels an unexpected pang of guilt despite having given him his freedom.
Chibi Evgenia compares the weeping Richard to a pathetic, abandoned puppy, a far cry from his future master assassin persona.
Re-entering the main mansion, she tries to justify her choice, knowing she cannot keep him merely out of pity. She envisions Richard's destined future as the ruthless leader of an assassin guild, a path fueled by his deep-seated vengeance. A metallic creak sounds as Evgenia slips back inside the heavy mansion doors, hoping her absence went unnoticed. She tiptoes through the silent, moonlit grand hall, unaware of a tall, dark figure watching her from the shadows. A sudden, sharp "hey" calls out to her, freezing Evgenia in place as her face pales with absolute dread. Heart racing, she realizes she has been caught by a man in a formal blue and gold knight's uniform. Panic consumes her as she realizes that being caught outside her room could lead to severe, immediate trouble. Turning to face her pursuer, Evgenia is struck by the man's familiar face, realizing he looks remarkably like herself. A vision confirms that the black-haired man with piercing blue eyes is indeed a high-ranking Basilian royal knight. She identifies the man as Alexis Basilian, the family's second son and her own biological younger brother. Alexis demands an explanation, questioning why his supposedly disciplined sister is wandering the mansion halls in the middle of the night. He mockingly asks if their father's orders have become a joke to her, while Evgenia internally curses her terrible luck. Alexis is baffled by her uncharacteristic silence, expecting her to erupt into one of her usual violent tantrums. Staring at her head bandage, the brother wonders if Evgenia truly lost her mind when she smashed it against the wall. Fed up with his arrogance, Evgenia snaps back, asking if he threw his knightly manners to a passing dog. Alexis flinches in visible shock when his sister sharply questions if that is how he should speak to his elder. Stuttering and confused, the young knight asks what she thinks she is doing by calling herself his sister. He stares at her with a mix of suspicion and disbelief, clearly rattled by her sudden change in demeanor. Alexis continues to question her, his expression hard as he struggles to process his sister's bizarrely polite behavior.
Evgenia recalls that in the past, Alexis used to despise it whenever anyone referred to her as his older sister.
Chibi Alexis and Evgenia bicker loudly, with him insisting that she must have permanent brain damage from her accident.
Looking away in annoyance, Evgenia tells herself she doesn't need his approval and just wants him to leave.
Turning back with a glare, she commands him to stop pretending he actually cares about her well-being. An oppressive silence falls between them as Evgenia wonders if her words were perhaps a bit too harsh. Alexis looks genuinely hurt, begging her to yell or get mad instead of treating him like a complete stranger. Evgenia feels an unladylike sneeze approaching, fearing for her hard-earned dignity while her internal voice warns of impending disaster. A muffled, suppressed kurung sounds as she sneezes, much to the bewilderment of her black-haired brother, the knight Alexis. Alexis calls out to his sister while she covers her face, blushing from the sheer embarrassment of the clumsy moment.
The young knight's expression softens with uncharacteristic concern as he wonders if his sister's red face means she was crying.
A sharp, loud achoo sounds as Evgenia loses her battle against the persistent tickling sensation in her nose once more.
Clad in a white nightgown, a forceful achoo rings out as Evgenia realizes she has definitely caught a cold. Peering out her window, she regrets not dressing more warmly during her late-night excursion to the dungeon annex yesterday. Looking through the glass, she spots a group gathered outside, wondering why Melissa and the servants are meeting a carriage. Gripping the bars of her window, she watches the courtyard with growing curiosity as a high-ranking visitor arrives early. Chibi Evgenia is shocked to see Alexis outside again, questioning why her brother is loitering near the servants' quarters.
Shivering in her blanket, Chibi Evgenia huffs in annoyance that her brother isn't currently undergoing the discipline he deserves.
A grand, dark carriage pulls up, and a man in a sophisticated black and gold military uniform steps out. She identifies the visitor as the Duke of Basilian, who immediately begins barking orders at a bowing head servant. From her window, she watches a maid rush back toward the mansion, sensing an urgent matter is finally unfolding. Melissa bursts into the room, breathlessly announcing that the Duke has arrived and specifically requested the lady's immediate presence. Realizing she is the reason for the Duke's visit, Evgenia decides this is the perfect chance to advance her plans. A system profile introduces the Duke of Basilian, a man whose power is second only to the imperial royal family. Known as a cold-blooded and ruthless politician, the Duke is rumored to treat every social interaction like a chess match. Narrations warn that meeting his icy eyes feels like standing on thin ice, while his deep voice commands total submission. Looking at the Duke's stern face, she prepares herself to confront the most intimidating member of her new family. She understands that winning his favor is the only way to secure his formal approval to marry the noble Uklid. Melissa helps her into a stunning purple lace gown, chattering happily about how the Duke must be worried about her. Evgenia remains skeptical, thinking that even a bitter enemy would feel concerned by someone smashing their head into a wall. Melissa finishes the final adjustments to the purple dress, asking with wide, expectant eyes if her lady is finally ready. A soft, elegant sarong sounds as Evgenia rises, her gown shimmering with a newfound resolve to face the Duke. Despite her maid's concerns about her fever, Evgenia grips the door handle and insists on meeting her father right now. Stepping into the hall, she stops before a young, brown-haired knight who is standing guard with a long ceremonial spear. Recognizing the knight she previously intimidated, she realizes she must silence him properly to keep her secret dungeon visit hidden.
With an authoritative air, the black-haired lady asks the trembling guard for his full name to seal their silent pact.
Stuttering in terror, the knight identifies himself as Gressel Fion, a name that seems strangely familiar to the transmigrated lady.
She offers a chillingly sweet smile, promising to tell the Duke that Gressel stood guard outside her room all night. A sharp, crisp pot sounds as the terrified knight salutes, his face a blur of frantic relief and absolute obedience.
As they walk away, Melissa playfully asks her lady if she has developed a secret crush on the nervous young knight. Melissa is offended on her lady's behalf, referring to the common guard as that thing, while Evgenia looks on blankly.
Deciding it's easier to agree vaguely, Evgenia tells Melissa to handle the situation however she sees fit for the moment.
Her heels click-clack on the stone floor as she suddenly stops, spotting a familiar figure blocking her path.
Alexis stands before her with a stern expression, demanding to know what his supposedly bedridden sister is doing out here.
Evgenia counters with a sharp gaze, asking if there is any particular reason she shouldn't be walking in her own home.
Chibi Evgenia mocks her brother for slacking off, asking if he shouldn't be reporting to the Imperial Knights at this hour. Alexis explodes in rage, shouting that he just finished a week of training and today is his first day of leave. His voice trails off as he looks away, admitting he only came home after hearing about her sudden, violent collapse. Infuriated by her unreadable, dazed expression, Alexis yells at her to stop making that ridiculous face during their serious argument. He points a finger at her, warning her to stay quiet about his own activities since she also wandered off alone.
A chilling, oppressive aura fills the hall as a tall, dark-haired man appears silently behind the bickering, unaware siblings.
Alexis freezes and immediately stammers "Big Brother" as the newcomer issues a single, low-voiced command for him to be quiet.
Listening to Alexis's terrified reaction, Evgenia realizes this imposing man must be the first son of the Basilian household. A formal introduction confirms the man is Leihart Basilian, the eldest son and heir to the Duke's immense power. A sharp quag sounds as she tightly grips her dress, sensing an unsettling, dark energy radiating from the stoic Leihart. Despite lacking the original Villainess's memories, she is struck by a wave of vivid, instinctive emotions directed at the man. Leihart dismisses their presence with a cold profile view glare, leaving Evgenia with a lingering, sour sense of intense displeasure. Evgenia stares downward with an icy gaze, finding it hard to contain her growing irritation upon seeing Sionel. Sionel narrows his eyes with suspicion, questioning why the black-haired lady has appeared despite the standing confinement order. Maintaining a calm composure, Evgenia states that she has come to discuss an urgent and important matter with her father. Sionel is left reeling in shock as a sudden thud echoes, questioning the boldness of his sister's unexpected demand. As Sionel protests her presence, a commanding voice from within the office grants Evgenia permission to enter the room. Inside the grand office, the Duke sits at his desk, his voice cold and authoritative as he addresses his children. The brown-haired Duke gazes forward with a stern, tired expression, his military uniform reflecting his high and rigid status. With a piercing look, the Duke commands his daughter to approach, reminding her that he gave the order himself. Evgenia stands tensely between the men, the atmosphere in the room thick with silence and her own mounting internal pressure. As her heels click-clack across the floor, Evgenia fears the Duke is even more terrifying than the novel described. The black-haired lady feels a sting of injustice, wondering why she must suffer for the past tantrums of her predecessor. The Duke suddenly pauses as he looks at his daughter,
his stern demeanor flickering with a moment of visible hesitation. Crystal-clear tears fall from Evgenia's purple eyes as she looks at her father, her silent sorrow filling the ornate room. Horror washes over the Duke's face as he shouts his daughter's name, completely unsettled by her rare display of vulnerability. Sionel watches with wide-eyed disbelief, his heart sinking as he witnesses the proud Evgenia weeping openly before them both. Wiping her eyes, the black-haired lady realizes with a start that her body is reacting emotionally without her conscious permission.
A heavy thud sounds as the Duke slams his hands onto the desk, his panic rising at the sight of her.
Looking flustered, the Duke approaches his daughter and asks why she is crying, his previous coldness replaced by frantic worry.
Evgenia is stunned into silence as her father offers a lace handkerchief, appearing far kinder than the rumors suggested.
The brown-haired Duke apologizes for calling her out, mistakenly believing her condition had improved while her hand trembles slightly. Seeing the Duke's genuine concern, Evgenia realizes he is just a father deeply worried about his daughter's well-being. The black-haired lady feels foolish for fearing exile, realizing she may have fundamentally misunderstood her father's true character and feelings.
Looking at the luxurious room, Evgenia resolves that she must discuss her marriage to finally meet her beloved Uklid.
Evgenia bows deeply to her father and offers a sincere apology for her past behavior, leaving him completely caught off guard.
Stunned by the change, the Duke questions her words as she promises to never cause another scene in his office.
In a shocking declaration, the black-haired lady announces her intention to give up her pursuit of the crown prince forever.
The Duke asks for confirmation with a trembling voice, while Yevgenia continues to dab her tearful eyes with the handkerchief. Evgenia notes that her tears are helping her cause as she expresses a desire for a partner who values her.
Gripping the handkerchief tightly, the black-haired lady pleads for her father to find her a suitable marriage match immediately.
She claims she must marry quickly before her resolve falters, while the image of a blonde prince haunts her thoughts.
A beautiful vision of a blonde man and Evgenia together appears, representing her secret hope for a happy future.
Sionel asks if she is being honest, and Evgenia firmly confirms that her words are the absolute, unvarnished truth.
The siblings stand in silence, the weight of her life-altering request hanging heavily between them in the sunlit room. Evgenia tells them she trusts their judgment, though a chibi thought bubble notes their obvious and lingering skepticism of her.
She adds a sense of urgency, stating she wishes to be married before the Crown Prince's own wedding ceremony occurs.
Imagining a peaceful life with her bias, Evgenia expresses her desperate need to leave the capital and start anew. The Duke appears overwhelmed and sweaty, while Evgenia worries that her groom might be changed to someone she doesn't want.
Smiling softly, the black-haired lady reaffirms her trust in her father, but insists on maintaining her high noble status.
The Duke reassures her with pride, declaring that no matter what happens, she will always be a Basilian lady.
A close-up reveals the Duke's contemplative expression as he considers the gravity of his daughter's sudden and dramatic request.
In a chibi moment, the Duke promises to choose a match fitting her station, and a relieved Yevgenia exhales.
Turning to leave, the black-haired lady notes she has said everything necessary and prepares to return to her room.
Hoping to secure her victory, Evgenia stops and calls out to her father using the endearing term Dad.
A soft rustle sounds as her black hair flows beautifully among white roses, her expression delicate as she looks back once more.
The Duke stands completely paralyzed as he watches his daughter, the unexpected name she called him, echoing in the silent office. A look of intense shock and confusion remains on the Duke's face while he tries to process the sudden change in his daughter.
With a swift whoosh,
Evgenia turns to walk away with confidence, believing her plan to secure her father's favor succeeded perfectly. Her victory is short-lived, as her vision suddenly begins to swirl and blur, the world spinning out of her control. Evgenia collapses violently to the floor, while the Duke's frantic, terrified scream for her echoes throughout the grand room. Darkness enshrouds the scene as panicked voices scream for a physician to attend to the fallen and unconscious Duchess immediately.
Leehart checks the feverish Evgenia's forehead, ordering others to move aside as he realizes how sick she truly is.
Panic ensues in the bedroom as Duke Basilian and his sons gather around, frantically demanding a physician for the lady.
A physician carefully examines the bedridden Evgenia with a stethoscope, confirming she has developed a significant cold.
The doctor advises Duke Basilian and Linhart to let her rest, prescribing medicine to ensure a smooth recovery.
Chibi Duke Basilian explodes in a fit of angry confusion, questioning how his daughter caught a cold while isolated. The Duke remains suspicious, though the physician insists her condition isn't caused by her earlier self-inflicted head injury. Sweating and weakened, Evgenia rests while the physician notes that her body and mind have been severely drained.
Duke Basilian shouts in frustration, blaming his own absence for his daughter's worsening condition and perceived abandonment. The maid informs the surprised Duke, Leehart, and Alexis that the first thing Evgenia did was ask for her father.
A heavy silence falls as the Duke and Leehart trade expressions of stunned disbelief over Evgenia's unexpected concern.
The Duke looks pained, realizing his habit of avoiding her tantrums has only deepened the rift between them.
Alone in his office, the Duke is visibly moved that his daughter sought his presence instead of screaming.
A rare, soft expression touches the Duke's face as he dwells on the fact that Evgenia finally called him father.
Leehart reflects on her sudden change, noting she has harbored deep resentment toward their family since she was a child. A nostalgic vision shows a young, happy Evgenia embracing her mother, the only person she ever truly followed. Memories of a grieving child reveal that Evgenia hid her heartbreak and true feelings from everyone after her mother died. The Duke and Leehart speculate that the Crown Prince's proposal to Melissa was the catalyst for Evgenia's physical collapse. Infuriated, the Duke defends Evgenia's worth as a noblewoman, despite the obsessive behavior she previously displayed toward the prince. Leehart suggests that the current situation provides the perfect opportunity to proceed with the planned marriage for the family's benefit.
Looking stoic and determined, Leehart prepares to navigate the complicated politics surrounding his sister's future.
Leehart warns his father that Evgenia is notoriously fickle and might retract her consent for the Rudion marriage at any moment.
The Duke agrees that securing a strong alliance with House Rudion is the best way to stabilize their family's standing. Somewhere distant, the blonde Uklid Rudion sits amidst cherry blossoms, diligently writing with a black quill.
A frustrated shout, "Baruch!"
echoes through the Rudion duchy as a beautiful mansion stands under a cloudy sky.
Identified as Uklid Rudion, the handsome blonde man looks up from his desk as a frantic matter is brought before him. His aide, Delano, expresses absolute shock at the news that Uklid intends to marry the notorious Lady Basilian. Delano argues against the union, citing Evgenia's ruined reputation and her public obsession with the crown prince.
Ignoring the protests, Uklid calmly asks Delano to report their current outstanding debts to Count Beers.
Delano reveals a looming debt of 750 gold, warning that failure to pay will lead to financial ruin. Uklid explains that the pressure from their creditors and long-standing debts has left them with very few options.
To save his household, Uklid concludes that he must go through with the marriage despite the lady's poor reputation. Delano questions Uklid's judgment, reminding him of the Duke's fearsome reputation versus Uklid's earlier positive impressions.
Chibi Uklid and Delano bicker as Uklid recalls the Duke being surprisingly hearty during their formal business discussions.
Euklid envisions the Duke happily unloading a massive dowry just to rid himself of his wild daughter.
Staring at a portrait of the red-haired crown prince, Euklid dismisses the rumors of a romance with Evgenia as nonsense.
A sharp ahum sounds as Euklid decides her past feelings don't matter compared to the survival of his duchy. Euklid commands his steward to prepare for their departure to the capital, ignoring Delanos' last-ditch efforts to stop him.
Putting on his glasses, Euklid's gaze turns sharp and calculating as he prepares to meet his future bride. Defeated, Delano bows his head and accepts his lord's final decision with a heavy, worried sigh.
Euklid offers a confident smile, dismissing his aide to handle the rest of their travel preparations.
A sharp talk sounds as Euklid sits alone in his grand office, his mind focused on the upcoming journey.
Suddenly, the room dims as Euklid stumbles Biddle, clutching a cloth to his mouth in a moment of physical distress.
Looking pale and sweating, Euklid gasps for air as he struggles with a secret, debilitating illness. A white handkerchief is stained with a shock of bright red blood, revealing Euklid's terminal condition is worsening.
Back at the mansion, the maid enters Evgenia's room with a cheerful tune, carrying a tray of bitter medicine.
Evgenia moans in annoyance, feeling the servants are treating her like a tragic patient on her deathbed.
Addressing her maid as Anne, Evgenia insists she doesn't need to be watched so closely while taking her medicine.
Drinking the bitter brew, Evgenia realizes her family's overprotective behavior stems from her recent collapse and suicide attempt.
She imagines her father and brothers hovering over her, their shouting voices calling her scrawny and weak.
Evgenia wakes fully, staring at the gathered men with a look of pure exasperation, wondering what they are all doing.
Evgenia wakes to her father and brothers apologizing for their absence, but she is left completely bewildered by their kindness. Tearfully denying any loneliness, the black-haired lady insists she isn't hurt, while her family watches her with deep, uncharacteristic concern.
The Duke and his sons exchange pitying looks, clearly unconvinced by her protests as they believe she is masking her pain.
To brighten her mood, the blonde maid offers a piece of candy as a reward, and the lady begrudgingly accepts it.
Sitting alone, Evgenia quietly chews on the sweet treat, reflecting on the strange, sudden shift in her family's overprotective behavior.
The blonde maid suddenly remembers to mention that Lady Melissa requested to see her earlier in the day.
Startled by the news, the black-haired lady wonders why the protagonist of the original story would suddenly want an audience.
The scene shifts to a sunlit gazebo where the two women share tea and enjoy the refreshing morning air together. Melissa looks gentle and refined as she prepares her tea, her blonde hair shimmering under the warm glow of the sun.
Observing her cousin, Evgenia notes how Melissa's peaceful nature is a stark contrast to the intense, dark atmosphere of House Basilian. Setting down her cup, the black-haired lady asks if there was a specific reason Melissa sought her out today. Melissa panics when she nearly spills her tea, but Evgenia dismisses the accident, noting the tablecloth is barely wet anyway.
Despite the lady's kindness, Melissa remains visibly nervous, leading Evgenia to suspect it involves the Crown Prince's recent marriage proposal.
Placing a reassuring hand on her handkerchief, Evgenia tells Melissa there is no need to worry about the imperial marriage offer. Melissa explains she only met the prince by chance as a commoner and had no idea he was actually royalty.
Clenching her fist, the blonde girl insists her decision to reject the imperial engagement was entirely her own choice.
Taking a sip of tea, Evgenia questions why Melissa still seems so terrified if the marriage isn't the problem.
Melissa hesitantly confesses that she wandered into the annex basement by mistake, causing a wave of internal panic for Evgenia.
Realizing Melissa might have discovered her secret captive, Richard, the black-haired lady prepares to silence her cousin's growing suspicions.
With a chilling and authoritative gaze, Evgenia commands Melissa to forget
everything she saw or heard down in that basement.
Melissa trembles as the lady ominously claims she has already sent that boy somewhere much better than the dungeon. Seeing her cousin's terror, Evgenia quickly clarifies she released him with ample travel funds, which brings Melissa immediate tearful relief. Changing the subject, the black-haired lady asks how life at the estate is treating her, and Melissa happily praises her studies.
Evgenia offers Melissa more freedom, suggesting she ask the Duke for permission to visit the temple with a protective knight.
Melissa mentions the temple is currently crowded with prayer gatherings because the crown prince is preparing to depart for war.
Understanding dawns on Evgenia, realizing that the impending war is the real reason the nobility ignored Melissa's rejected engagement. As they continue their tea, Melissa leans in to share a whisper about the prince's legendary martial reputation.
A grand vision shows the first emperor slaying a dragon, a legacy of power that supposedly flows through the current prince. Their peaceful afternoon is interrupted as the blonde maid rushes toward the gazebo, shouting for her lady in a panic. Evgenia freezes mid-gesture, her expression souring as she senses an unwelcome presence approaching the garden.
The maid announces an unexpected guest, and the black-haired lady realizes the crown prince has arrived to see them.
A close-up reveals a man with reddish-brown hair calmly drinking tea, his expression masked by the ornate cup.
Resting his chin on his hand, the handsome red-haired man looks incredibly arrogant in his fur-lined royal attire.
A formal introduction identifies him as Kaide Ilios, the crown prince and a major male lead in the original story.
Standing at the door, Evgenia hesitates, dreading the sudden confrontation with the man she once obsessively pursued.
A glowing purple crown symbol appears as the prince smiles, his presence filling the room with an oppressive, dark energy. Kaide looks directly at Evgenia with a smug expression, asking if she truly missed him that much.
Despite his handsome appearance, the black-haired lady finds her heart cold, feeling only a deep sense of anger and hatred.
Evgenia offers a stiff, formal greeting, realizing the original lady's twisted love for him has finally died.
The red-haired prince leans forward, his gaze sharp and calculating as he studies his supposedly heartbroken former admirer. Kaide mocks her suicide attempt, asking if she truly rammed her head into a wall because of his proposal to Melissa.
Evgenia coldly tells him not to concern himself, but the prince persists, claiming her self-harm was blamed on him.
When he mentions her recent strange behavior, the black-haired lady sharply retorts that she has simply come to her senses. Kaide looks visibly annoyed, his brow furrowing as he questions the validity of her sudden change in personality. Firmly declaring her independence, Evgenia states she has let go of her feelings and plans to marry someone else entirely.
Kaide looms over her, his shadow dark and imposing as he demands to know if she's really leaving him.
Exploding in rage, the prince grabs her and shouts, unable to believe she is giving up the position of crown princess. Evgenia looks at him with pure bafflement, wondering why he is reacting so violently to the rejection he always wanted. Demanding her personal space, the black-haired lady tells the prince to let go of her immediately. Kaide laughs off her words as a lazy lie, but Evgenia shocks him by mentioning the proposal already sent to House Rudion. Evgenia wonders how a supposed swordmaster can fail to notice a fly buzzing near his face. Kaide continues his smug mockery, completely unaware of the insect currently landed on his cheek. The black-haired lady grows increasingly irritated, her concentration shattered by the fly's presence on the prince. Chibi Evgenia shouts in a bubble, frustrated that Kaide hasn't noticed the insect near his head. Clenching her fist, Evgenia's patience reaches its limit as the fly continues to get on her nerves. Kaide leans forward, still wearing an arrogant smile, while the insect remains perched on his chin. When the prince offers to accept her as a mistress, Evgenia suddenly swings her hand toward him.
A heavy, frozen silence fills the room as both figures stand motionless after the unexpected physical contact.
A chibi version of the black-haired lady looks horrified and panicked by her own impulsive, violent outburst.
Staring with a red mark on his face, the prince demands an explanation for the shocking slap.
Evgenia looks deeply flustered, realizing she just struck royalty while being caught up in her own irritation.
Flashbacks depict the original lady's past obsessive behaviors, though she never previously resorted to physical violence. The narrative notes that even at her worst, the former Yevgenia never lost control past a certain line.
Past memories show Kaide deliberately ignoring Evgenia to dance with other ladies during formal events.
Despite his neglect, the original lady was the one who always handled the messy endings of his flings.
A childhood memory illustrates the long history of irritation and boredom that has defined their relationship.
Back in the present, the red-haired prince remains stunned, unable to comprehend why she actually hit him.
Kaide rationalizes the slap, assuming she must be reacting to the shock of his proposal to Melissa.
Looking down with a troubled expression, Evgenia offers a small, reluctant apology for her sudden lack of control.
Footsteps thud as Kaide walks away, thinking that his interaction with her is far from finished.
Turning back, the prince announces his departure for war, casting a somber shadow over their conversation.
He tells the lady he will be gone for months, while Evgenia remains silent and unreadable. A close-up shows Kaide offering a sharp, cold smirk as he prepares to take his final leave.
Evgenia suddenly pulls something out with a quick snap, holding out a pink, lace-trimmed handkerchief for him. Startled by her gesture, Kaide looks at the gift, confused by her sudden show of apparent concern.
Evgenia notes the delicate lace, suggesting the gift matches his refined but arrogant royal personality perfectly. With a firm clack, Kaide snatches the cloth, his expression shifting into one of dark satisfaction.
The prince looks back over his shoulder, his red eyes glimmering with a newfound, dangerous interest in her. To Kaide, Evgenia's cold violet eyes now resemble strong liquor, intoxicating and far more complex than before.
Enveloped in a menacing red aura, Kaide smirks while clutching the token he received from the lady.
The sun sets over the grand Basilian estate, marking the end of the prince's unexpected visit. Alone in the parlor, Evgenia sighs and rubs her temples in a state of sheer mental exhaustion. Reflecting on the day, she finds it unbelievable that she actually slapped the crown prince of the empire. A chill runs down her spine as she realizes her slap might have backfired into attracting his attention. Panicking, Chibi Evgenia worries that she mistakenly gave him Melissa's handkerchief instead of her own. Stretching his arms with a groan, the brown-haired brother Alexis looks forward to a quiet dinner and rest. Opening the double doors with a thud, Alexis stops in shock at the sight of his sister. The Duke and his sons are speechless as Evgenia breaks tradition to join them at the dining table. Calmly cutting her steak, Evgenia questions why this simple act of a family dinner is so surprising. A small flashback shows the Duke and Melissa's disbelief when Evgenia first proposed eating together earlier. Setting down his fork with a clink, the Duke brings up the Crown Prince's earlier visit to them. His face darkening with paternal concern, the Duke asks if the prince blamed her for Melissa's rejection. Hesitating slightly, Evgenia reassures her father that the prince didn't scold her or cause a major scene. She expresses confusion over how the prince knew about her previous disgraceful behavior at the estate. The Duke's aura flares with purple rage as he demands to know who dared gossip about his daughter. Evgenia mentions the prince's insulting offer to make her his mistress, feeling the weight of the disrespect. Exploding in fury with a sudden roar, the Duke's sons shout in outrage over the prince's blatant insult. One brother declares the prince's words a direct and unforgivable attack on the honor of House Basilian.
The Duke resolves to lodge a formal complaint, leaving Evgenia worried that the situation is escalating too far.
Wiping her mouth, Evgenia tries to settle them, hinting that she already gave the prince a piece of her mind. Evgenia stuns the family at dinner by calmly admitting she slapped the crown prince earlier that afternoon. Her brown-haired brother, Alexis, reacts with explosive shock, unable to believe his sister actually struck royalty. While Evgenia apologizes for her lack of control, the Duke surprisingly praises her for standing her ground. The Duke laughs, dismissing the slap's impact on a swordmaster, while Evgenia recalls targeting a literal bug. Setting the past aside, the black-haired lady expresses her firm desire to get married as soon as possible. The Duke explains her urgent request is exactly why he summoned her to join them for dinner. Bathed in a warm, golden glow, Evgenia feels an overwhelming sense of relief that the moment has arrived. A tense close-up shows the lady swallowing hard, her composure wavering as the reality of her plan settles. The Duke reassures her that any man would want her, while Evgenia imagines a tiny, adorable groom. As dinner is served, the Duke notes that House Rudion's response arrived slowly via a standard carriage. Determined to help his daughter's prospective house, the Duke plans to send magic carriages and stones as gifts. Evgenia asks her father to send one carriage ahead and prepare for her eventual move to the capital. The Duke praises her meticulous nature, noting she even hand-picked the knight who will accompany her after marriage. A memory of a brown-haired knight appears, and Evgenia confirms he left a very positive impression on her. Evgenia realizes the maid, Anne, handled the knight selection, while the Duke suggests delaying the wedding for a year. Envisioning a grand wedding, the lady rejects the delay, insisting on marrying her blonde groom immediately. Evgenia explains she wants to leave the capital before the crown prince returns from his war campaign. Hearing her resolve, the Duke sighs and agrees to contact the temple immediately to expedite the wedding. Alexis looks completely lost, asking why the conversation is suddenly dominated by talk of weddings and departures. The Duke formally announces Evgenia's decision to marry, leaving Alexis panicked and demanding to know the groom's identity. When the Duke identifies the groom as Duke Rudion, Alexis gapes in utter disbelief at the shocking news. Alexis feels betrayed as he realizes even Melissa already knew about the engagement while he was left out. The brown-haired brother erupts in a dramatic tantrum, shouting about his status as a family member being ignored. Alexis storms out in a huff, leaving the black-haired lady wondering why he is reacting so childishly. Night falls over the estate, and the heavy parlor doors stand shut after the chaotic family dinner. Walking down the hallway, Evgenia and the blonde maid discuss Alexis's immature behavior with a weary sigh. The pair stops as they encounter the knight, Gressel Fion, standing guard in the dimly lit corridor. The brown-haired knight, Gressel Fion, notices his lady's approach and offers a formal, polite greeting. To her surprise, the knight drops to one knee and begs for forgiveness for his past disrespect toward her. Gressel admits he once believed the rumors about her, thinking himself unlucky to be assigned as her guard. Now deeply moved by her grace, the knight vows to devote his entire life to serving her. A close-up reveals Gressel's somber and earnest face as he reflects on his newfound loyalty to his mistress. With a commanding tone, Evgenia tells the knight to stand up, and he complies with immediate, sharp obedience. She questions if he is truly willing to follow her to the harsh, cold north following her wedding. Gressel mentions his sibling is a hostage for treatment, a term that immediately sets Evgenia's suspicions on edge. He quickly clarifies that she was actually protecting his sick sibling, a realization that leaves him visibly moved. Flustered by the knight's excessive emotional outburst, the black-haired lady tells him to leave for the night. Later in the parlor, Evgenia reflects on her luck in gaining such a loyal guard out of nowhere. She realizes that the blonde maid, Anne, is far more capable than she previously imagined.
Staring into her tea, she wonders if the original lady was truly as villainous as the story claimed. Evgenia asks Anne if she finds her sudden change in heart and marriage plans to be strange. Anne offers a bright, radiant smile, stating that her loyalty to her lady was pledged long ago. Evgenia smiles softly, knowing everything changed simply because the soul inside her body is no longer the same. A chibi version of the maid cheers for the marriage as the scene transitions to a dark night. A man lies on the floor in a dark room, gasping in agony as he clutches his head.
Kneeling before a statue, the man begs for death, his desperate plea echoing through the silent, cold cathedral.
The man, a silver-haired priest, wonders if helping Lady Bazillion will finally bring him the relief he seeks.
Another man approaches the silver-haired priest, warning him that his endless all-night prayers will lead to collapse. The priest's companion notes his strong character, looking with deep concern at the exhausted, sweat-drenched man. The narrative identifies the haunted, worn-down man as High Priest Damien, a key figure in the unfolding drama. Damien, the silver-haired high priest, visits his companion late at night to deliver an urgent, mysterious report.
Narrator text explains that Evgenia's new groom is surprisingly not the crown prince, defying her well-known obsession.
The long-haired man gasps in shock as Damien reveals his intentions regarding the upcoming unexpected Bazillion wedding. Walking through the cathedral, the silver-haired Damien announces he will personally preside over the lady's wedding ceremony. Damien clutches his pendant with a somber, determined look, fixated on personally overseeing the union of House Bazillion. A bright morning sun rises over the grand Bazillion estate, signaling the start of a busy new day. Tension hangs heavy in the parlor as Alexis and Evgenia sit in an awkward, brooding silence together. Alexis explodes in frustration, shouting at his sister for glaring at him, though she remains calm and collected.
Weary from the conflict, Evgenia notes that her brother is still sulking over her sudden engagement news.
A chibi version of Alexis buries his face in a pillow, grumbling childishly about being ignored by family. Despite the friction, Evgenia hopes to mend their relationship and enjoy some family harmony before her wedding. Sitting across from her brother, Evgenia points out his impending departure for war and his unnecessary grumpy brooding. Alexis asks why her treatment of him has shifted so drastically, catching the black-haired lady completely off guard. Hugging his pillow tight, Alexis complains that he was never allowed to call her by the familiar title, Nuna. Evgenia looks away, haunted by a past she doesn't fully understand as she reflects on her old self. A painful memory shows a young Alexis offering flowers to a cold, distant, and remarkably cruel child Evgenia. In the flashback, the young lady harshly forbids her brother from ever addressing her with any affection. With a cruel slap, the young Evgenia knocks the bouquet out of her brother's hands without a second thought. The discarded flowers lie on the ground as the young boy gasps, his heart broken by her coldness. Present-day Evgenia realizes how brutally cold the original lady was toward her own adoring younger flesh and blood.
Looking at her reflection, she wonders what drove the original Evgenia to be so hateful toward her brother.
Breaking the cycle, Evgenia gently gives Alexis permission to call her Nuna from this moment forward. Alexis reacts with suspicious shock, prompting Evgenia to snap back at his dramatic and ungrateful attitude. Sighing at his grumbling, the lady realizes that even kindness is met with a tantrum from her brother. Evgenia tells him to drop the subject, while Alexis peeks over his pillow with a lingering sense of disbelief.
Alexis shyly asks if he can visit her at Rudion's castle after he safely returns from his campaign.
Panicking at the mention of danger, Evgenia scolds him for jinxing his return, while Alexis pushes for an invite. Softening her stance, she formally agrees to let him visit her new home in the snowy, distant north. Evgenia warns him not to sulk about her absence, as Alexis brings up her gift to a total stranger.
With a swift snap, Evgenia produces a white handkerchief and offers it directly to her stunned, brown-haired brother.
A playful smirk touches the lady's lips as she asks if his wounded pride is finally satisfied. Alexis stares at the gift in awe, his eyes shimmering as he touches the delicate, lace-trimmed fabric.
A radiant, joyful smile breaks across the brother's face, his resentment melting away in an instant.
Seeing his genuine happiness, Evgenia offers a small, warm smile of her own, finally bridging the gap.
The scene shifts to 3 days later as life continues in the bustling, sun-drenched capital city.
A luxurious magic carriage thuds through the streets, carrying the prospective groom toward his bride's estate.
Inside, the blonde-haired Uklid Rudion reviews papers while expressing gratitude for the Basilian family's incredible generosity.
Euclid's brown-haired vassal crosses his arms, deeply suspicious that the Basilians are hiding a dark, secret scheme.
The vassal whispers about the double dowry, but the calm, blonde-haired Euclid remains focused on his documents. Looking through his spectacles, Euclid wonders if the lady's sudden haste is simply born from a devout nature.
He suggests she wants a quiet wedding, but his vassal finds the timing far too convenient to be true. Euclid fixes a sharp look on his companion, asking him to clarify the source of his intense doubts.
The brown-haired man insists there must be a pressing reason behind her urgent desire to marry right away.
Euclid's eyes darken with cold authority as he warns his vassal that he will hear no more insults. Realizing he crossed a line, the man bows his head in a hasty, fearful apology to his lord. The carriage thuds to a halt at the Basilian estate, arriving under a clear, sparkling blue sky.
Maids whisper amongst themselves, baffled by Lady Evgenia's uncharacteristically nervous behavior and unusually heavy makeup.
Euclid steps gracefully out of the carriage, his arrival marked by the soft thud of his boots.
Bathed in golden light, the handsome Duke Rudion makes a striking first appearance at his bride's home.
The narrative flashes back 3 hours, where a piercing scream and confused shouts echo through Evgenia's room.
Evgenia screams in absolute horror upon discovering a bright red pimple right on her forehead.
Despair clouds the room as Anne knocks and enters to find her lady sulking at the vanity. A sudden, sharp gasp escapes the blonde maid as she sees the blemish on the lady's skin. Anne frantically apologizes, suspecting that one of yesterday's facial packs must have caused an unfortunate allergic reaction. A flashback shows the over-enthusiastic maids fanning her green-masked face, realizing their skincare routine has backfired spectacularly. Evgenia desperately asks for a way to fix it, but Anne firmly warns her against popping the pimple.
Chibi Evgenia clutches her fist, nervously wondering if she can truly trust the maid to hide the disaster.
A few hours later, the dark-haired Duke Sionel and his attendants wait in the hall as the scene shifts.
Duke Sionel stares in disbelief, questioning what on earth Evgenia has done to her face before the meeting. He looks bewildered as he asks if she even bothered to call the dressing maid for help.
Sionel decides they must leave to spite her look, as the staff whispers about her bizarre new style choice.
Close up on the lady's heavy makeup as she wonders why everyone is reacting so strangely to Anne's work.
A grand white carriage stands ready in the lush gardens of the estate under the bright morning sun.
Duke Sionel leads his family out to the courtyard as the carriage finally arrives for the formal meeting.
A panicked Chibi Evgenia shouts about the arrival as the carriage door begins to swing open wide.
Duke Sionel maintains a dignified and stoic expression as he prepares to welcome the important guest. Delano, the brown-haired aide, lets out a startled yelp upon seeing the black-haired lady's heavy, dark makeup.
The aide peeks over suspiciously, wondering if this shocking look is some strange new trend from the capital. Uklid Rudion steps out of the carriage, looking magnificent in a white and beige outfit under the sun.
The blonde Duke Uklid greets her warmly, his gold eyes shining with a gentle and welcoming gaze.
Captivated by his presence, Evgenia feels a profound certainty that she was destined to meet this person.
Her heart swells with such intense emotion that she feels a sudden, inexplicable urge to start crying.
The couple stands bathed in golden light, their contrasting appearances creating a striking and memorable moment together.
Uklid introduces himself politely while a tiny, swooning chibi Evgenia admires his godlike sculpted features and voice. Lost in his beauty, the black-haired lady completely forgets to introduce herself until Duke Cyanel clears his throat. Regaining her composure, Evgenia prepares to greet him formally, her heavy lace sleeves catching the bright sunlight. She offers a radiant smile and introduces herself, the heavy makeup creating a bold and unforgettable impression. Uklid pauses for a moment, his expression unreadable as he takes in his bride's startlingly dark makeup. To her shock, the blonde-haired Duke reaches out and gently kisses the back of her gloved hand.
Uklid closes his eyes during the respectful gesture, his blonde hair glowing in the soft, warm light.
An internal scream of pure joy erupts from Chibi Evgenia after the romantic and unexpected hand kiss. She stands stunned, realizing that her ultimate bias has actually performed such a chivalrous act for her. Looking at his hand, the lady greedily wishes he would have held on for just a moment longer. A fierce blush creeps over Chibi Evgenia as she scolds herself for having such shameless thoughts.
Duke Cyanel interrupts the romantic atmosphere, suggesting the weary traveler come inside to rest after the journey.
Uklid asks to change his clothes before dinner, and the Duke readily agrees to the polite request. Back in her room, Evgenia looks in the mirror and finally realizes her makeup is a complete disaster. Chibi versions of the group reflect on the fashion faux pas and their lack of matching outfits. Evgenia thinks Uklid is a literal angel for being so kind despite her terrifying and over-the-top appearance. She notes that he spoke gently without even flinching at her face while she could only stare. Reflecting on her reaction, she realizes she felt none of the discomfort she experienced with Richard before. Later in the evening, the blonde maid Anne knocks softly on the door and asks to enter. Anne rushes inside and presents her lady with several small, colorful bottles filled with mysterious medicinal potions.
Chibi Evgenia looks confused as Anne explains that the bottles contain sedatives and aids for her digestion.
The blonde maid looks downcast, feeling guilty for her part in the lady's disastrous and heavy makeup. Evgenia offers a kind word of thanks, hoping the medicine will help calm her nerves during dinner. Anne suddenly perks up, realizing there is one more crucial task she needs to help her lady with. With a hearty laugh, Evgenia tells Anne to wipe off the makeup and find her a fresh dress.
The blonde Melissa greets her sister with a bright smile as the scene shifts to the dining hall.
Looking fresh and natural, Evgenia asks if anyone else has arrived yet as she joins the family meal. Evgenia asks Melissa if there is something on her face, noting her sister's silent and stunned stare. Evgenia stands in her beautiful gown, though her heavy makeup gives her an uncharacteristically intense and dark appearance.
Melissa asks for Evgenia's opinion on Uklid Rudion, and the black-haired lady finds him to be a good man.
Chibi Evgenia blushes with joy, celebrating her golden opportunity to brag about her ultimate bias come to life.
Evgenia notes that Uklid possesses an elegant presence, despite their interaction consisting of little more than formal greetings. She reflects on Uklid's compassionate reputation, finding that his gentle demeanor perfectly matches the positive rumors she heard.
Evgenia eagerly anticipates their upcoming conversation, while the blonde Melissa looks on with a silent and worried expression.
Duke Cyanel, the black-haired Delano, and the blonde Uklid Rudion make their formal way toward the dining hall. Uklid Rudion looks magnificent in his decorated white outfit, standing poised as the focal point of the grand room. A gourmet feast is laid out across the long table, accompanied by a polite invitation for everyone to sit.
Duke Sional offers food considerations to Uklid Rudion, who responds to the elder man's kindness with humble gratitude.
Admiring Uklid from across the table, the black-haired Evgenia mentally describes him as a perfect and radiant sunshine prince. Evgenia stares blankly as she realizes her makeup plan has failed, feeling the weight of the awkward situation. Lost in her admiration, she notes Euclid's golden hair and elegant figure that overflows with grace and sophistication. Evgenia concludes that the blonde duke truly looks like a man crafted by the gods with perfect care. The atmosphere shifts as their eyes meet across the dinner table, causing Evgenia to gasp in sudden surprise.
Uklid Rudion looks back at her, a subtle and respectful blush appearing on his face as their gazes lock.
Evgenia questions if she merely imagined the red tint on her future husband's face during their brief eye contact. Uklid shyly covers his mouth and looks away with a clear blush, feeling the intensity of the lady's gaze.
Duke Sional asks if Uklid is feeling well, prompting a hasty and polite apology from the bashful blonde duke.
Noticing her untouched plate, Duke Sionel asks the black-haired Evgenia if she has lost her appetite during the meal.
Evgenia realizes she forgot to eat because she was completely distracted by admiring Euclid's beauty from across the table.
Duke Sional encourages his daughter to ask the Duke any questions she might have to bridge the gap between them.
Evgenia stares at the table, thinking to herself that she wants to learn absolutely everything about the mysterious Uklid.
Duke Sionel playfully asks if she is shy, while the block-haired Evgenia admits she is feeling incredibly nervous.
Duke Sionel inquires about Euclid's traveling party, noting that only his black-haired aide accompanied him on this trip.
Uklid recalls his young nephews in the snowy north, explaining why the children could not join the long journey.
He explains that since his stay in the capital will be brief, he decided it was best not to bring them.
Duke Sionel expresses concern over Evgenia leaving so quickly after the wedding schedule was already moved forward so much. Sionel asks Uklid to stay a few extra days, while the black-haired Evgenia awkwardly focuses on her drink.
Evgenia questions the necessity of personally greeting the emperor, noting he is not a relative of either noble house.
Duke Sionel stops mid-sentence, reminding his daughter how the emperor has thought fondly of her since her early childhood.
Euclid politely declines the stay, explaining that his young nephews make it difficult to remain in the capital any longer.
Uklid clarifies their plans, stating they will spend the final night at the Rudion residence within the capital city.
Melissa sadly wonders if the great distance will make it impossible to see her older sister often in the north.
Duke Sional attempts to reassure Melissa, but Evgenia firmly states the distant north will be her new home now.
Uklid looks noticeably surprised and intrigued by Evgenia's determination to settle and adopt in his far-off northern lands.
Evgenia resolves to prove she isn't the cold person he likely expects, hoping to slowly win his genuine trust.
As Uklid prepares to take his leave, a chibi version of Evgenia lets out an internal scream of excitement. Duke Sional laughs heartily, calling Uklid his son-in-law and wishing him a safe return trip to the temple tomorrow.
Evgenia begs her father to maintain his dignity while he continues to gush over having such a fine son-in-law.
Uklid Rudion looks back one last time with a noticeable blush, his expression filled with deep and unspoken thoughts.
Inside the dark magic carriage, the black-haired Delano welcomes Uklid back as they begin their journey for the night.
Delano asks how the formal dinner went, and Uklid replies that it went well enough for a first meeting.
In their chibi forms, the two men discuss the different lifestyle of the capital as the carriage rolls forward. Delano asks for Uklid's honest thoughts on the lady, who describes her first impression as being quite striking.
Delano looks puzzled as Uklid falls into a deep and silent contemplation about his encounter with the mysterious lady.
Delano admits that the lady's appearance was so shocking that his heart almost stopped the moment he saw her.
To Delano's surprise, Uklid looks pensive and sincerely remarks that he found Evgenia to be truly and remarkably beautiful.
Chibi Delano lets out a shocked and loud shout, completely baffled by Euclid's unexpectedly positive assessment of her look. Euclid blushes while his black-haired aide, Delano, expresses shock that his master prefers a woman with an intimidating aura. Inside the carriage, Delano wonders if Evgenia seemed gloomy, perhaps even being forced into the marriage against her will. Euclid's pensive expression reflects his internal conflict as he considers his previous plan to offer his bride complete freedom. He admits to himself that his initial plans were foolish the moment he actually met his striking future bride. Narration describes a profound sense of time stopping, as if he had finally found what he long sought. The blonde duke stands poised beside his carriage, looking toward the black-haired lady during their fateful first meeting. A close-up captures the startlingly dark makeup on Evgenia's face as she meets the duke's gaze under the sun.
Earlier that evening, Duke CNL asks Uklid if he is curious about the reason for the hurried wedding ceremony.
Uklid humbly replies that he is simply grateful for the duke's favorable opinion and hadn't questioned the timing. Seated together in the Grand Basilian office, the blonde duke politely thanks the elder man for his kind words. Duke Sional confesses his lack of understanding regarding Evgenia's thoughts while mentioning the persistent rumors about her dark character.
CNL mentions that his niece was granted their noble name by the imperial family, which Uklid acknowledges having heard.
The Duke explains that when an imperial marriage proposal arrived, he naturally assumed it was intended for his daughter, Evgenia. Sional questions whether the proposal was actually meant for his niece instead, creating a moment of deep uncertainty. Uklid clenches his fist tightly during the sobering conversation, processing the unexpected complexity behind the marriage proposal.
Sional describes Evgenia as being deeply hurt, while Uklid looks on with a sincere and empathetic expression.
The elder duke notes that his daughter has fortunately decided to let go of her long-held painful feelings. Uklid is visibly stunned to learn that Evgenia herself was the one who insisted on proceeding with this marriage. Duke CNL confirms that the union was something his daughter personally pushed for, rather than being forced by him. Inside the carriage, Uklid reflects on the truth, realizing that Duke Sional did not force the marriage upon her. Narrated text explains that she chose this path to move past her history, despite the risk of future regret. A close-up of the blonde duke reveals his concern about the consequences of potentially canceling the marriage now. He worries about losing the Vasilian duchy's trust and damaging his family's honor, especially for his young nephews. At the Rudion residence, a guard aggressively demands their identity, asserting the property is under imperial management. The black-haired aide is angered by the guard's insolence, but Uklid decides to step out and handle it himself. Stepping from the carriage, the blonde duke is informed that House Rudion's residence is currently imperial-managed property. Uklid walks forward with an imposing and serious presence, immediately silencing the guards with his silent authority. The guard is completely speechless and paralyzed with shock upon realizing he is addressing the duke himself. Uklid coldly states his exhaustion and commands the guard to open the gate so he can finally rest. The guard stammers an apology as the heavy iron gates creak open to allow the carriage and party inside. Historical text describes the residence as a 5-century-old gift from the emperor that has largely remained empty and unused. Despite declining family fortunes, the imperial family maintained the property, making it effectively an extension of the throne. Inside the foyer, an attendant named Philip bows deeply to welcome the blonde duke back home.
Looking weary, the blonde duke requests that Philip guide him to his bedroom for the night without delay.
Footsteps echo as Philip leads the blonde duke up the grand staircase while discussing his travels in the carriage.
Uklid declines a meal, stating he would rather wash and go straight to sleep immediately after his long journey.
Wrapped in a white robe, Uklid dries his hair with a towel until a soft knock sounds at the door. A brown-haired attendant enters the opulent bedroom,
bowing to offer his services to the blonde duke. The young servant stands in rigid shock, his mouth open as he takes in the duke's impressive appearance.
Introducing himself as Rick, the servant receives a polite greeting and thanks from the duke for the bath.
Uklid dismisses the young man, who enthusiastically promises to be available whenever the duke might need anything. Once alone, Uklid sits on the edge of the bed as the door clicks shut behind the departing servant. He reflects on the persistent sense of unease he has felt from the moment he arrived at the residence. Kneeling on the patterned carpet, Uklid searches near the bed to confirm his suspicions about the empty-feeling house. He discovers a hidden purple magic device, comparing the Imperial-managed residence to a sophisticated birdcage for monitoring him.
Panels reveal surveillance devices planted throughout the room and balcony, confirming that his every movement is being tracked.
Clutching the magic device, Uklid stares ahead with a somber expression as a chill runs down his spine. Historical records show the Helios Empire was founded by two houses, the wealthy House Brazilian and magical House Rudion. While Basilian controlled wealth, the first Rudion had served as the emperor's primary mage, wielding great magical power.
An illustration depicts the first emperor slaying a dragon, a feat that secured the founding families their noble titles.
House Rudion abandoned the capital's comforts, choosing to settle within the unforgiving and frozen lands of the north.
In happier times, the young blonde Uklid thrived under the protection of his caring father and wise older brother.
The peaceful days ended abruptly as a heavy hand rested on a table, marking the tragic passing of his father.
Standing by the window, Uklid's blonde brother confesses he can no longer hold on, leaving a heavy burden behind. Uklid looks on with a shattered expression, haunted by his brother's final, apologizing words of despair. Following his brother's death, the blonde Uklid stands alone by a coffin, inheriting both a title and fatherless children. Grief consumes Uklid as he struggles to erase the memory of those haunting final words from his mind. Driven by suspicion, Uklid desperately scours the grand residence in search of the truth hidden within its walls.
Kneeling on the wooden floor, he discovers hidden eavesdropping devices and magic tools planted to monitor his every move.
Trust becomes impossible for Uklid, who watches every servant's gesture through a lens of constant fear and tension.
The overwhelming pressure causes Uklid to collapse, a violent shake rattling his frame as he succumbs to the stress.
Gasping for air and coughing up blood, the blonde man wonders if death would finally bring him much-needed peace. Despair takes hold as Uklid leans against a table, feeling powerless to even protect his own failing, ailing body. A close-up of Uklid's eye reflects his deep-seated worry for the uncertain future of his brother's helpless children. As a dark-haired woman peeks through the door, Uklid realizes his death would mean his nephew's certain demise. Wiping blood from his mouth, Uklid resolves to stay alive, knowing the children cannot survive without him. Dropping a blood-soaked cloth, Uklid decides he must continue feigning weakness to protect what remains of his family. A dark smirk plays on Uklid's bloodied lips, marking the moment he chooses to hide his true strength. Lying in bed, Uklid reflects on how he cast aside all questions to focus purely on the struggle for survival. Uklid acknowledges that for his survival and the house's future, this upcoming marriage is a non-negotiable necessity. Standing by a carriage, Uklid views his union with the dark-haired lady as the only way a powerless man can help his family. The scene shifts to the magnificent Vasilian estate, standing tall and ornate under the bright morning sun. A blonde maid assists the black-haired Yevgenia as she prepares for the ceremony, her wedding veil catching the light. Dressed in his formal white and gold wedding attire, the blonde Uklid looks stoic and prepared for his duty. Under her sheer veil, the black-haired Evgenia looks ahead with violet eyes filled with silent, focused resolve.
Sunlight bathes the grand architecture of the manor on the wedding day, though the atmosphere remains heavy with anticipation.
Entering the hall, Evgenia notes the tired faces of her family, while a chibi Melissa wonders what happened to them.
The dark-haired Duke Sionel and his son look haggard, admitting to having overindulged in drink the previous night.
At the breakfast table, Duke Sionel asks a quiet Evgenia if she feels disappointed by the lack of guests. Sionel explains that a Vassilian wedding would normally be swarmed by countless nobles offering their grand congratulations. Looking over the lavish spread, the Duke admits he wanted to avoid surrounding her with a crowd of strangers.
Evgenia recalls the empty pageantry of noisy gatherings and confirms she actually prefers this quiet, intimate atmosphere.
Duke Sionel remarks on how his daughter seemed to change overnight, having worried about her lack of emotional openness. A close-up captures Evgenia's thoughtful expression as her father mentions her previous collapse following the Crown Prince's rejection.
The dark-haired Duke Sionel confesses to a strange feeling as he notices his daughter's newfound and surprising maturity.
Duke Sionel's tired face softens with a weary smile as he accepts that this change is not necessarily bad. Evgenia listens intently as her father mentions that the high priest will be arriving to bless the wedding. A sudden cough from the blonde Melissa interrupts the conversation, prompting Duke Sionel to check on her health. In a playful chibi form, Melissa is revealed to be blushing with excitement at the thought of seeing Damien. Evgenia realizes that Damien is the high priest and the final male lead from the story she once read.
Narration describes the high priest as having a noble face and gentle manner, despite his cold rejection of Melissa.
The silver-haired high priest Damien stands with divine authority, rumored to be a man personally beloved by the gods. Chibi Evgenia ponders nervously, worried about the high priest's legendary and immense divine powers.
Terror strikes Chibi Evgenia as she realizes his spiritual insight might expose her as an interloper from another world.
Looking toward the manor, Evgenia steels herself, knowing this marriage remains her only path forward despite the risks.
Uklid stands alone in his wedding finery, his hand clutching his chest as he prepares to meet his bride.
Reaching the grand white doors, the blonde duke politely requests permission to enter the ladies' private chambers. Uklid waits patiently as a soft knock sounds against the ornate door, signaling his arrival for the ceremony. Standing before the entrance, Uklid maintains a serious and determined gaze as he prepares to face his future wife. Upon entering, Uklid is startled to see the black-haired Evgenia holding a mysterious purple bottle in her hand. Looking at the mysterious purple liquid, the blonde duke wonders if the bride is attempting to poison herself.
Uklid is struck with horror as the black-haired Evgenia raises the bottle to her lips in apparent despair. Panicked by the sight, Uklid rushes forward, determined to stop his bride from consuming what he believes is poison. He strikes the bottle from her hands with a frantic sweep, sending the glass spinning through the air.
Gasping for breath, the blonde duke demands to know what on earth she was thinking by acting so recklessly. Uklid's voice trembles with intensity as he assumes she is driven to extreme measures by her unhappy marriage. He begs her to stop, having secretly hoped she wouldn't take this political union with such tragic seriousness. Tension fills the room as Uklid turns away in distress, while the black-haired Evgenia watches him with stunned confusion. Though he never wanted to replace the crown prince, seeing her desperation makes the blonde duke feel deeply responsible.
Uklid reaches out to take her hands, urgently stating that he will go and call the wedding off immediately.
As he moves to cancel the ceremony, the black-haired lady stops him, calmly explaining there has been a misunderstanding. Surrounded by a floral aura, the black-haired Yevgenia reveals the liquid was actually just a simple sedative for nerves.
She explains she was simply so nervous about the wedding that she asked a servant for something to relax.
A memory shows the black-haired Evgenia asking her blonde maid Anne for the calming medicine she used yesterday.
Stunned into silence, the blonde duke blushes deeply as the weight of his massive, dramatic overreaction finally sinks in.
Overwhelmed by embarrassment, Uklid covers his face, acknowledging that his frantic assumption was a very easy mistake to make.
Recovering her composure, the black-haired Evgenia asks what actually brought the duke to her chambers before the ceremony. In a chibi moment, the black-haired lady worries her response was too stiff, while Uklid stands in rigid silence. Uklid's gaze softens with intensity as he explains he actually came to offer a formal apology to his bride. With a somber and humble expression, the blonde duke lowers his head to sincerely ask for her forgiveness.
He confesses to feeling guilty, believing a man as lacking as himself is unworthy of being her husband.
Uklid promises not to blame her if she hates him, while Chibi Evgenia thinks his self-deprecation is absolutely ridiculous.
A maid enters the room, announcing that the ceremony is starting, and they must hurry to the grand hall.
The blonde maid bows deeply as the duke prepares to lead his bride toward their official union at last.
Frustration colors Chibi Evgenia's face as she realizes she missed her perfect chance to object to his humble words.
Looking at her white rose bouquet, the lady laments the messy start to a wedding that hasn't even begun.
As she walks, the black-haired bride feels annoyed that Uklid would even suggest she might fall for another man.
Her irritation lingers until she spots Uklid waiting by the fountain, his presence bathed in the bright morning light.
The blonde duke looks so dazzling that all of Evgenia's annoyance instantly vanishes, replaced by pure, shimmering admiration. Uklid asks if she is all right, still looking concerned about their earlier encounter as they prepare to walk together.
With a charming and gentle smile, the blonde duke offers his gloved hand to lead her into the ceremony.
Evgenia looks at him with focused resolve, reflecting on the many twists and turns that brought them here today. Bathed in golden light, the couple enters the grand hall, their presence commanding the attention of the entire room.
They walk toward the altar with poise, a perfectly matched pair of nobility ready to seal their shared future.
Standing before the high priest, the names of Uklid Rudion and Evgenia Bazilion are formally announced to the gods.
The silver-haired high priest, Damien, looks down with a cold and piercing gaze as he begins the holy rites.
Feeling the pressure of his intense spiritual presence, the black-haired Evgenia manages a small, nervous reply during the ceremony.
Damien leans in slightly, his sharp blue eyes fixed on the bride as he claims he didn't hear her.
The high priest delivers a chilling sermon about abandoning lies and seeking atonement, casting a dark shadow over the wedding.
He continues his grim warnings, urging repentance before evil runs rampant, leaving the couple standing in stunned, heavy silence.
Confused whispers ripple through the guests as Chibi Evgenia wonders if this terrifying sermon is actually normal for weddings.
Duke Sional is visibly fuming, his face dark with anger as he wonders why the high priest is acting hostile. Beside him, his son grinds his teeth in fury, offended by the priest's disrespectful tone at their family's wedding. Damien looks on with cold indifference, commanding the couple to humbly submit to the destiny laid out before them. Behind her veil, the black-haired Evgenia grows quiet, pondering the priest's strange and pointed words about accepting one's fate.
She recalls the original story where Evgenia was ruined and divorced, a tragic fate she is determined to avoid.
Damien cryptically suggests that while destiny is fixed, carving one's own path is the only way life truly works.
Duke Sional and his son share a look of utter bewilderment, completely unable to follow the priest's bizarre dialogue.
Closing his eyes, Damien finally offers a blessing for their road ahead, though his earlier words still hang heavily. Looking at her blonde husband,
Evgenia steels herself to follow her practiced plan and forge her own new destiny.
Standing at the altar, the golden-haired Uklid Rudion solemnly pledges to honor Evgenia as his wife until death.
Looking ethereal in her white veil, the black-haired Evgenia vows to treasure her new husband more than her own life. A sudden, sharp realization stops Uklid in his tracks as he stares at his bride with wide-eyed surprise.
As the wedding ceremony proceeds within the massive, sun-drenched cathedral, Evgenia worries if she has committed a social blunder. Clearing his throat with a polite ahem to regain control, the silver-haired priest prompts the couple to share their first kiss. A brown-haired lady presents a gift box, noting that the Duke might find the contents less than impressive compared to diamonds.
Evgenia much prefers the traditional amethyst rings passed down through generations of the Rudion family over flashy modern jewels.
The couple joins hands before the altar, their movements graceful as they prepare for the most intimate part of the ceremony. Bathed in a warm golden glow, the black-haired Duchess smiles tenderly at her husband through her delicate lace veil. A heavy, rhythmic thump-thump of Uklid's racing heart fills the air as he leans in close to his beautiful bride.
Time seems to stand still as the newlywed couple shares a soft, romantic kiss to seal their holy union.
Their lips meet in a gentle embrace, the world fading away as the light of their new beginning surrounds them.
As they pull apart, a look of quiet contemplation settles on Uklid's face while he gazes at his new wife.
In a comical moment of internal panic, Evgenia's chibi spirit reels, questioning if her long-awaited romantic climax just fizzled out.
Bitterly disappointed by the brevity of the kiss, the black-haired Duchess signs her marriage documents while grumbling internally about the unfairness.
A joyful dong-dong of wedding bells echoes through the grand cathedral as the priest officially declares them husband and wife.
Outside the carriage, the stern Duke Basilian reminds his daughter that she will always be a member of their powerful family.
Evgenia gently asserts her new identity as a member of House Rudion, reassuring her father that she will manage just fine. Softening his gaze, the Duke tells his daughter that his love for her is unchanging, regardless of her new title. With a soft smile, the black-haired lady accepts her father's blessing, acknowledging the deep bond they still share.
A blonde girl named Melissa hopefully asks if they can correspond through letters, and Yevgenia happily agrees to keep in touch.
Watching Melissa's joyful laughter, Evgenia grows concerned that the girl's future may be difficult given the unusual nature of the male leads.
The Duke and Sionel approach the Duchess, signaling that it is finally time for her to depart for her new home.
The wedding party gathers in the bright courtyard, prepared to say their final goodbyes as several carriages wait in line.
CNL offers a parting word of support, while a chibi Uklid promises to remember the family's offer of assistance.
As her dress ruffles with a soft swoosh sound, Evgenia notes with concern that her deep discomfort around Sionel is only intensifying.
A sudden chuck step halts the Duchess as Sionel calls out to her, his expression unreadable as he interrupts her departure. Pausing mid-step, the black-haired lady wonders if her brother has been harboring some unspoken final message for her this entire time.
Sionel points out that her specific carriage has yet to arrive, leaving Evgenia momentarily confused about the delay.
The group stands together in the courtyard, the air thick with anticipation as they wait for the final arrival. The brown-haired man explains that they have purchased a brand new carriage for her, incorporating some of her cherished personal belongings. Stunned by the gesture, Evgenia questions if this extravagant gift is truly a sincere wedding present from her brother, Sionel.
When the Duchess asks where her ride is, Sionel simply gestures toward the approaching sound of rumbling wheels. The siblings exchange a silent, tense look as the mystery of the new carriage prepares to reveal itself to them both. A loud clatter signals the arrival of a magnificent, gilded coach that rolls into the courtyard with surprising speed and grandeur. A mysterious man with messy, multicolored hair begins to disembark, his presence immediately commanding the attention of everyone present. The eccentric newcomer adjusts his glasses, confidently stating that he has arrived exactly as promised for the special occasion. Identified as the legendary Tower Lord, the man offers a smirk while noting his arrival might be considered slightly fashionably late. Evgenia is left speechless as the Tower Lord himself presents a bizarre, futuristic-looking carriage that defies all traditional design standards. Surprised by the high-profile guest, Cyanel admits he never expected a figure as powerful as the Tower Lord to attend. The Tower Lord explains that he came personally to witness the reaction to his newest, most ambitious mechanical model for their VIP client. Casting aside all formality, the eccentric lord throws an arm around Uklid, revealing they are actually close personal friends. CNL watches in disbelief as the Tower Lord confirms the long-standing and profitable relationship between their two influential factions. When asked about a wedding gift, a sharp snap of annoyance sounds as the Tower Lord bluntly rejects the idea. As the two men bicker like old friends, a chibi Evgenia observes the scene, finding their genuine camaraderie rather amusing. Shifting back to business, the Tower Lord prepares to unveil the special carriage he designed specifically for the black-haired Duchess. With a swift motion, a swoosh sounds as the cover is removed to reveal a sleek, metallic machine that looks like a rocket. Horror and confusion wash over the newlyweds as they stare at the bizarre invention, questioning if it's even safe to ride. The Tower Lord proudly boasts about the aerodynamic curves of his creation, while Evgenia fears it might launch her into space. Suspicious of his high-tech design, the Duchess wonders if the Tower Lord is another transmigrator before he reveals he merely built a dream. The black-haired Evgenia exhales a quiet sigh of relief as the heavy wedding ceremony finally concludes. Surrounded by a fiery aura, the black-haired lady criticizes the Tower Lord's mechanical carriage as bizarre. The rainbow-haired Tower Lord is crestfallen, defending the immense cost and effort put into his creation. Evgenia insists the overly complex carriage is simply too embarrassing for a noble lady to ride in. Whispering to the Tower Lord, Evgenia suggests an alternative plan while the blonde Uklid stands nearby. The staff proceeds to load heavy luggage into the carriage under the Duke's watchful, curious gaze. Standing beside his bride, the blonde Uklid formally announces that they are ready for their departure. Duke Cyanel bids them farewell, reminding them to send word immediately once they reach their destination. The family watches with mixed emotions as the carriage pulls away from the grand manor at last. While the Duke watches, the Tower Lord gestures wildly, explaining the incredible price difference of his invention. He remains deeply confused that the lady would find his mechanical masterpiece anything less than amazing. Panic strikes as a hooded aide informs the Tower Lord that their VIP carriage has suddenly disappeared. The shimmering, revolver-shaped mechanical carriage sits alone, its presence shining brightly under the afternoon sun. A horrifying realization dawns as the aide reveals that a month's worth of profit was loaded inside. The rainbow-haired Tower Lord screams in absolute terror at the accidental loss of all his tower's revenue. Inside her carriage, the black-haired Evgenia shifts uncomfortably, feeling something hard digging into her seat. She wonders if the discomfort is just her imagination as she travels alone toward her new home. Evgenia notes her separation from Uklid during the journey, riding in the carriage provided by her father. Despite the bumpy ride, she celebrates the successful first phase of her plan to leave the capital.
Thoughts of the creepy purple-haired Crown Prince Kaiden haunt her, making her glad to be far away.
Flushed with joy, the black-haired lady reflects on the miracle of finally marrying her ultimate favorite character.
A blushing chibi Evgenia dwells on her wedding day, replaying the romantic near-kiss moment in her head. Determined to build a future, she resolves to stay by Uklid's side and show him her devotion.
Looking out at the scenery, the black-haired bride anticipates many happy days ahead in the northern mountains.
The scene shifts to a grand imperial palace where the emperor receives news of the sudden union.
Emperor Owen Elios ponders the unexpected marriage, questioning whether the official registration could actually be real.
A formal nameplate confirms the identity of the powerful and contemplative ruler, Emperor Owen Elios.
Seated at his massive desk, the emperor admits he initially suspected the marriage document was a fake.
He remained suspicious of the sudden union, noting that Evgenia had no previous talks with noble houses.
His advisor explains that the Basilian family had been holding out for a proposal from the prince.
Irritation grows as the emperor recalls Prince Kaiden's sudden proposal to the younger sister Melissa instead. He reflects on the shock that the blonde Duke Rudion has become the Basilian family's new son-in-law. The journey continues through a vast snow-covered landscape as the carriages trek further into the north. An aide informs Uklid that the new Duchess appears to possess an extraordinary and mysterious special ability. The blonde Duke looks on with surprise, questioning the validity of the aide's strange and sudden claim.
The aide suggests that the black-haired lady must have been born under a very lucky star. He recounts how she received a valuable, jewel-studded watch just for helping a man in trouble.
Visuals reveal the expensive teddy bears she won easily during a series of small prize-winning events.
The aide concludes that the Basilian family must have an incredible, innate luck regarding money and treasures. Uklid dwells on her shocking wedding vow to protect him with her very life and dying breath. A vision of her under the veil reminds him of the deep, moving sincerity in her eyes.
He realizes she is truly serious about their marriage, moving far beyond her past obsession with another.
A gentle, touched smile reaches Uklid's face as he begins to appreciate his wife's surprising and dedication. The carriages brave the heavy, falling snow as they finally cross deep into the northern mountain pass. Surrounded by prizes and gifts, Evgenia hopes her treasures remain undamaged during the long, bumpy ride. A cheerful maid peeks through the carriage curtains to announce their arrival at the Grand Ducal Estate. The massive, ornate white castle of House Rudion looms majestically against the backdrop of snowy mountain peaks. Evgenia gazes at the grand estate with awe, imagining it as the perfect cozy nest for them.
Uklid helps his black-haired bride descend from the carriage as they finally reach the castle's main entrance. The lady notes the cold, unwelcoming expressions of the Rudion retainers waiting for them in the snow.
Evgenia reflects on the bitterness of Uklid's retainers while the blonde duke engages them in a tense staring contest.
The black-haired lady notices two blonde children standing nearby, wondering if they could be related to her husband.
Looking closely at the nervous pair, Evgenia confirms that these are actually Uklid's young niece and nephew. A scenic view of the grand white Rudion castle is accompanied by a warm welcome for the returning lord. Surprised by the large gathering, the blonde Duke Uklid apologizes to his staff for the sudden and unannounced arrival.
With a radiant and charming smile, Uklid thanks the assembled retainers for taking the time to celebrate his marriage. Turning toward his bride, the blonde duke asks a blushing Evgenia if the large crowd startled her. Evgenia's heart flutters as she realizes that Lady of the House is now her official title at the estate.
Uklid formally introduces Marianne and Dior, calling the blonde children forward to greet their new aunt for the first time.
Sensing their fear, the black-haired lady resolves to approach the hesitant children with extreme care and kindness. Marianne and Dior remain frozen and uncertain, their wide eyes reflecting a deep sense of unease toward their new aunt. Uklid offers another apology, explaining that the children haven't had many opportunities to meet and interact with new people.
Evgenia reassures her husband that it is perfectly normal for children to be shy around strangers during a first meeting.
With a warm and welcoming expression, the black-haired lady introduces herself and invites the kids to simply call her aunt.
A sudden, sharp pinch to a child's arm occurs, accompanied by a quick, stinging sound and a silent gasp.
Marianne gasps in sudden pain as the blonde boy, Dior, watches the tense interaction with a worried expression.
Dior shouts in defiance, rejecting the lady's kindness and labeling his new aunt a terrifying witch instead.
A heavy, shocked silence falls over the group as everyone reels from the child's sudden and disrespectful outburst.
Angered by the disrespect, the blonde Duke Uklid firmly scolds Dior for speaking so rudely to the Duchess. Uklid turns back to a stunned Evgenia, offering his sincere apologies for the children's young age and uncharacteristic hostility. Cleverly reframing the insult, Evgenia claims that witches in stories are always beautiful, turning the slur into a compliment.
Dior looks on in utter confusion, completely thrown off balance by the black-haired lady's calm and unexpected response.
Seeking to win them over, Evgenia produces a jar of shimmering purple candies she specifically bought for the children.
The black-haired lady offers the treats with a sparkle in her eye, inviting the children to taste them.
Chibi Evgenia gushes over the children's cuteness as they happily munch on the delicious, sweet purple candies. Uklid watches the interaction with a contemplative gaze, noting the unusual and complex dynamic between his wife and the kids. A sense of unease lingers as a cold and distant woman with brown hair watches the group from the shadows.
A dark memory of Marianne's cry of pain resurfaces, hinting at a hidden cruelty lurking within the grand manor.
Relaxing in a luxurious bath, the black-haired Evgenia ponders the strange events and hostile atmosphere she encountered upon arrival.
A brown-haired maid enters to announce dinner and urges the Duchess to head toward the dining room immediately.
Evgenia decides she must personally observe the children to understand the true cause of their fear and behavior. The scene shifts to the grand dining hall of Rudion Castle, where a massive table has been elegantly set.
Entering the hall, Evgenia is baffled by the absurdly long distance between her seat and the rest of the family.
A maid explains the arrangement was meant to avoid awkwardness, but the distance only makes Evgenia feel more isolated.
The black-haired Duchess realizes that from this extreme distance, she can barely even see her husband's face. Nearby retainers whisper in confusion, wondering if the Duke actually intended for his new family to remain so distant. Uklid's handsome presence makes Evgenia swoon as he politely invites her to take her place at the table. To her utter horror, Evgenia realizes she has been placed at the prestigious head of the table, feeling immense pressure. The black-haired lady notices another woman watching her with an intensely sharp and unpleasant gaze during the meal. Evgenia reflects on the cold, suspicious stares this mysterious woman has been directing at her since she arrived. She notes that the children seem oddly wary and hyper-conscious of the stern woman standing behind them. With a focused and suspicious look, Evgenia begins to question the true identity and purpose of this lingering guest. Evgenia asks if the woman is the nanny, but Uklid clarifies that Lady Beers is not a servant. The black-haired lady is surprised to learn that the woman in the room is actually a member of the nobility. Uklid explains that Amy Beers is the late Duchess's sister who helps look after the young children. Evgenia's suspicions grow as she wonders why a noblewoman would reside in such a remote and modest estate. The blonde Duke Uklid looks on as his bride processes the complicated family dynamics and hidden tensions within the castle. Uklid firmly dismisses any notion of an unmarried noble lady residing permanently within the castle for any reason.
Evgenia turns to Lady Beers, inquiring if she plans to visit the children again the following day.
The black-haired Duchess suggests an afternoon visit instead, planning to tour her new home during the morning hours.
Lady Beers dismisses the servants for the day, her stern expression casting a heavy shadow over the room. The brown-haired noblewoman bows respectfully, though her mind is clearly racing with unspoken concerns and hidden agendas.
A sudden, sharp realization strikes Lady Beers as she reflects on the unsettling changes occurring within the Grand Manor.
Glancing suspiciously to the side, the woman remains alert and watchful of any further developments in the castle. The young blonde boy, Dior, stares in wide-eyed shock as he processes a surprising and deeply troubling revelation. Dior recalls Amy's warnings about Amy being a villain, strengthening his resolve to protect Uklid from her. Uklid asks if Dior was frightened in his absence, and the boy admits to being just a little scared. After apologizing for being away, Uklid listens as Dior prepares to ask him for a special, heartfelt wish. With a warm and gentle smile, the blonde duke asks Dior what it is he desires most from him. Marianne begins to speak, her tone shifting toward a bold and unexpected question that catches everyone off guard. Standing before the group, the blonde girl bluntly asks if the new couple will be sharing a bed tonight. A stunned silence falls over the table as Uklid and Dior reel from the young girl's shocking inquiry. A flustered Uklid tries to laugh off the awkward moment, explaining that Marianne simply enjoys teasing those around her. The black-haired lady, Evgenia, remains silent and thoughtful as she observes the complex and strange family dynamic. A focus on the intricate lace of her gown reflects the high status and pressure she now carries. Shifting back to earlier in the day, the grand and opulent interior of the castle leaves someone breathless. Dior and Marianne stand in awe before a massive mountain of gifts sent to them by their new aunt. A heavy sigh escapes the blonde girl as she processes the confusing contrast between the gifts and the rumors. Noticing his sister's hesitation, the young boy nervously asks if she is angry about this sudden influx of presents. Marianne warns Dior not to blindly trust Amy's claims, even though they were told their aunt is a monster. She recalls Amy's threats of replacement punishment and asserts that she will handle the situation herself from now on. Dior tentatively admits that their new aunt actually seemed like a good person during their brief encounter. Relieved by his sister's possible agreement, Dior's face lights up with a radiant and hopeful smile. Marianne reasons that Uncle wouldn't marry anyone truly awful, just as a hand reaches for a nearby door. The children freeze in sudden terror as Lady Beers appears, her presence immediately chilling the warmth of the room. Stalking through the hallway, Amy Beers fumes over how much Evgenia differs from the malicious rumors she heard. She turns sharply to confront the children, her intense and demanding expression forcing them to shrink back in fear. Lady Beers interrogates the kids, mocking Marianne for suggesting that the new Duchess might actually be a kind person. She scoffs at the idea that candies could change anything, insisting that everyone knows how nasty Evgenia truly is. Lady Beers claims Uklid is being sold off and cruelly asks the children if they feel any sadness for him. A cold, calculating look in her eye reveals Lady Beers' true intent to manipulate the children's trust and fear. Leaning in with a sinister grin, she asks if they truly want to protect their uncle from the Duchess.
Back at dinner, Uklid continues to apologize for Marianne's teasing, hoping his bride hasn't been too deeply offended.
Evgenia offers a gentle and reassuring smile, signaling her understanding and patience with the children's unpredictable behavior. A maid announces that the Grace Room is being prepared for use for the first time in many years. Marianne innocently asks if the Duke and Duchess will be sleeping there together, sparking another wave of awkwardness. Uklid blushes as he confirms the arrangement, while Marianne playfully wishes them a wonderful first night as a couple.
Confused by the unfamiliar name, Evgenia asks her husband to explain what the grace room actually represents.
Uklid clarifies that it is the traditional bedchamber for the ruling couple, leaving Evgenia to process their northern customs.
The black-haired Duchess realizes with a start that they are required to spend their wedding night together tonight.
Noticing her shocked reaction, a blushing Uklid worries if his explanation was too blunt or forward for her.
Evgenia focuses intently on her meal, desperately hoping Uklid doesn't find her curiosity or her sudden hesitation strange. Her face flushes a deep red as she realizes the heavy gravity and expectations of the upcoming evening. Later, in her private quarters, a brown-haired maid offers to help the Duchess prepare for the special night ahead.
Evgenia insists she is simply going there to sleep, even as the maid presents several elegant and revealing nightgowns.
Chibi Evgenia rages about the pressure of a first night when they haven't even shared a real kiss yet.
Alone with her thoughts, she resolves to discuss a serious and important matter with Uklid once they are private.
A sudden knock at the door signifies that the time has finally come to head toward the grace room. Dressed in a long white nightgown, Evgenia follows the maid through the silent, dimly lit corridors of the castle.
The maid leads her to a set of massive, ornate doors and formally announces their arrival at the grace room.
Walking toward the bedroom, Evgenia tries to reassure herself that nothing significant will happen between them tonight.
Inside the chamber, a startled Uklid is caught holding rose petals while wearing a simple white robe.
Evgenia stands frozen at the entrance, staring in utter shock as the Duke panics upon being seen.
Blushing intensely, the blonde Duke holds the petals as his bride questions why he is clutching a rose.
In a chibi frenzy, Uklid clarifies he wasn't decorating, but simply wanted to prevent any pressure from the servants.
Chibi Evgenia offers a polite smile, though she secretly admits she was actually anticipating a more romantic gesture.
Observing the lavish, flower-filled room, she reflects on how the beautiful atmosphere seems wasted on such an awkward night. Uklid approaches with a serious expression, assuring her there is no need to worry about the night's expectations.
The black-haired Duchess watches her husband closely, wondering if he finds the idea of their proximity truly uncomfortable.
Evgenia realizes Uklid wants to build trust before sharing a bet, agreeing that their hearts should be in sync.
A chibi Uklid remains stiff and nervous, focused on maintaining a stable and equal relationship with his new wife.
Offering a gentle and understanding smile, Evgenia reassures the Duke that she is perfectly fine with his decision. Uklid invites her to sit beside him, indicating he has a serious matter he wishes to discuss in private.
A sudden, clumsy trip causes her to lose her footing with a sharp whoops as she moves toward him.
Uklid cries out in alarm, lunging forward to catch his bride before she falls to the floor.
The blonde Duke catches her in a protective embrace, their proximity creating a sudden and intense romantic tension. A stare into each other's eyes from a breathtakingly close distance, both blushing as their hearts begin to race.
Uklid's gaze softens with embarrassment, his face flushing a deep red as he holds her in his arms.
Caught off guard by the intimate moment, Evgenia's purple eyes widen as she processes the heat of his touch. The couple lingers in their shared embrace, the room filled with a soft, glowing energy as time seems to stop. Quickly pulling away, a flustered Uklid stammers out an apology for the sudden and unintentional physical contact. Sitting together on the bed, they both struggle with the heavy silence, desperate to move past the awkwardness.
Evgenia gathers her courage and bluntly asks if there is already someone else the Duke cares for in his heart.
Shocked by the question, Uklid listens as she clarifies that her inquiry comes from curiosity rather than a desire to blame. She explains her concerns about a forced marriage while expressing her own intent to be completely devoted to their union.
Noticing his hesitation, Evgenia's suspicion grows as she silently wonders if there truly is a hidden love in his past.
A chibi Evgenia sharply questions if Lady Beers is the mystery woman, but Uklid vehemently denies the absurd suggestion.
With a solemn and sincere gaze, the Duke confirms he has never once held a romantic partner in his heart.
Evgenia looks at him with a blush, asking if he is promising to never love anyone but his wife.
A warm light bathes the couple as they share an intimate conversation, beginning to bridge the distance between them.
Deeply moved by his words, the black-haired lady stares at her husband with a look of growing affection. Finding him completely enchanting, she impulsively begins to lower her gown as a flustered Uklid asks what she is doing. Their hands brush against the bed sheets, a soft gasp sounding as Uklid flinches at the sudden touch. Evgenia gazes at him with a seductive and confident expression, her long hair cascading over her shoulders.
In a humorous chibi scene, she lies stiffly under the covers, lamenting the fact that absolutely nothing actually happened.
The new couple lies awake in the grand bed, staring up at the ceiling in a state of mutual awkwardness. She reflects on how she tried to seduce him in a moment of passion, only to be met with hesitation.
Uklid's promise to never touch her regardless of the situation leaves Evgenia feeling confused and slightly rejected.
Sitting up in the dim light, she watches her husband sleep, trying to reconcile her feelings with his distance.
She leans in close to admire his handsome features, marveling at the beauty of his face while he slumbers. A sudden movement catches her attention, and she gasps as she realizes the blonde Duke is finally waking up. Panicking, Evgenia quickly dives back into a fake sleep, hoping he didn't catch her staring at him. She squeezes her eyes shut and remains perfectly still as Uklid begins to stir beside her in the bed. Uklid sits up and gazes at his supposedly sleeping bride with a thoughtful and gentle expression. Still feigning sleep, Evgenia waits with bated breath, wondering what her husband is thinking in this quiet morning moment. A slight blush creeps across the Duke's face as he continues to watch his wife with a tender gaze. Finally waking up, she rubs her eyes and looks toward him, pretending she just opened them for the first time. Uklid kindly suggests she rest longer, but she insists on getting up to begin her planned tour of the castle. When she asks if he will be her guide, he regretfully declines, citing a massive pile of work to finish. Evgenia looks at him in stunned disbelief, her mouth hanging open as she processes his unexpected refusal to join her. Evgenia reflects on her first morning as a married woman, feeling a bittersweet longing to have stayed by Uklid's side.
A profile of the blonde Duke captures a moment of quiet introspection as the sun rises on their new life.
The steward leads the Duchess into the vast library, which she finds incredibly impressive due to its massive size. Evgenia asks if she can visit the library whenever she pleases, and the steward happily welcomes her and the children. Plotting to uncover Uklid's ancestral secrets, the black-haired lady wears a wicked grin that makes the steward sweat with worry. The steward suggests moving the tour to the gallery, where portraits of the previous dukes and Uklid are displayed. Evgenia suddenly pauses, her attention captured by the mention of the gallery as she stares blankly at the older man. Imagining a young, adorable version of Uklid, a chibi Evgenia squeals with delight while the blonde boy stands by. She decides to postpone seeing the portraits until tomorrow, hoping to experience the gallery tour together with her husband. Evgenia asks if her office is located on the same floor as Uklid's study, surprising the steward with the request.
The steward explains how they managed the household previously and gleefully anticipates the Duchess taking over all management duties.
Chibi Evgenia suspects the steward is simply trying to dump all the chores on her while he relaxes in retirement.
The steward leads her through a grand, sunlit hallway, confirming her office is at the end of Uklid's corridor. Noticing the ornate wall lamps are unlit, Evgenia questions if they are merely decorations since she has never seen them used. The steward admits that magic stones are too expensive for the current estate's budget, leaving the lamps cold and dark.
Shocked, Evgenia reminds him of the many magic stones and carriages her family sent as part of the wedding gifts.
The steward explains that while they are grateful, they do not consider personal gifts as part of the operating budget. Evgenia asks about the status of the estate's debt, but the steward confesses he has no idea when it will be paid.
Recalling the original novel's plot, Evgenia realizes something is wrong because the Rudion family's debts should have been settled.
She commands the steward to bring her the ledgers for newly added assets and all records of their remaining debt immediately. Back in his study, a startled Uklid looks up from his work as he is interrupted by a sudden arrival. His advisor, a brown-haired man named Delano, expresses deep concern, noting that the Duke looks exhausted this morning. Delano awkwardly asks if he failed to get enough sleep, causing both men to feel a wave of sudden embarrassment. Uklid sits at his massive desk while Delano frantically tries to explain that his concern was purely professional, not suggestive. The blonde Duke offers a gentle smile, reassuring his advisor that the Duchess has not caused him any trouble at all. A vision of Evgenia sleeping peacefully reminds Uklid of the quiet, intimate night they shared together in the Grace Room.
Uklid blushes a deep red while touching his chin, his tender expression betraying his growing affection for his new bride. He bashfully admits that the night was actually a bit difficult, though he keeps the specific details to himself. The blonde Duke stares ahead with a serious, pensive look, his mind clearly occupied by thoughts of the Duchess. Delano is visibly shaken by the Duke's reaction, dropping his paperwork in shock as he processes his master's strange behavior. Chibi Delano fumes with rage, vowing to lodge a formal complaint against the Duchess for supposedly mistreating the Duke. The steward suddenly bursts into the room with a loud "Gah!" as he startles Delano and interrupts their conversation. Arms raised in triumph, the steward joyfully announces that a great benefactor has finally arrived to save House Rudion. Uklid asks if Delano is okay, while the advisor gazes in horror at the steward's sudden and messy nosebleed. Ignoring his injury, the steward explains that the Duchess has requested a complete list of every ledger in the house. The steward rushes toward Uklid's desk, proclaiming that their new lady is the true hope of the Rudion family. Delano looks skeptical as he stares at the Duchess's portrait, wondering why the steward's opinion has changed so drastically. Crying with relief, the steward reveals that Evgenia intends to use her entire dowry to pay off the family's debts. Uklid is stunned by the revelation, noting that the dowry is her personal property, and she shouldn't sacrifice it. The steward admits he told her the truth about their financial collapse, including how close they are to total ruin. Delano asks what the Duchess said in response, while Uklid remains silent and pained by the news of her sacrifice. The steward recalls how she let out a small, confident laugh before asserting her authority over the entire household. Delano feels an overwhelming pressure as the steward describes the Duchess's intense and regal presence during their confrontation. The steward continues to weep, explaining that she vowed to clear every coin of debt and demanded their absolute trust. Delano trembles with fear, wondering if she is a loan shark in disguise who will demand higher interest later. An older maid named Adelia appears, sharply scolding the advisor for his outrageous and disrespectful comments about the Duchess. Adelia approaches the men, moved to tears by the fact that the Duchess already cares so much for the house. Chibi Adelia rages at the advisor for his lack of gratitude, while a terrified Delano cringes under her fierce scolding. Uklid focuses intently on the bookshelves, determined to help gather the ledgers his wife requested to save their home.
The blonde duke looks distressed and thoughtful, processing the weight of the help his new bride is so freely offering.
A muffled sound of cough, cough echoes from behind a large, beautifully carved wooden door. Evgenia steps into the room, coughing as she waves her hand to clear the thick, stagnant air. Surveying her dusty new office, she realizes Uklid skipped this room during the tour to hide the filth.
While waiting for the steward, she spots Delano running toward her through the grand, sunlit corridor.
Evgenia waits patiently in the center of the neglected room as a voice gives her permission to enter.
Uklid, Delano, and the steward arrive, with the blonde duke appearing surprised to see her in the office. The steward apologizes in a frantic chibi panic, regretting that he didn't have the office cleaned beforehand.
Uklid admits the staff shortage made cleaning difficult, but Evgenia graciously notes it's natural since the house lacked leadership. Moved by her understanding and poise, Uklid blushes deeply as he stares at his incredible new wife.
Taking charge, Evgenia proposes a thorough quarterly scrubbing of the entire castle to maintain the estate properly.
The steward and Adelia sniffle with emotional relief, touched by the Duchess's immediate dedication to their home.
Uklid questions if she truly intends to use her dowry for debt, and she confirms it without hesitation.
The blonde duke looks down with a pained expression, clearly struggling to accept such a massive personal sacrifice.
Uklid asks why she would do such a thing, startling both the steward and Delano with his hesitation.
When Uklid wonders if her reputation is at stake, Evgenia counters his concerns with her own firm logic.
Evgenia asks if he fears for the family's standing, but a conflicted Uklid admits that isn't the issue.
Looking at their feet, Uklid confesses his true worry. He doesn't want her title to feel like a burden. The black-haired lady stares at her husband, her expression hardening as she prepares a sharp rebuttal.
Uklid flinches as she asks why he is placing the emotional burden on her instead of himself.
Realizing her words were sharper than intended, Evgenia looks slightly regretful while maintaining her firm stance.
In a chibi moment, she worries she pushed too hard, but Uklid solemnly says he understands her point.
Evgenia scoffs at the idea of charging her husband interest, while Uklid argues that money matters require clarity. She explains that keeping their finances separate feels like a shackle, as if he's preparing for a future separation.
Declaring herself a Rudion, she asserts her right to clear the debt and protect her family's legacy.
Evgenia warns that refusing her help would mean he doesn't respect her as his wife, leaving Uklid stunned.
She reminds him of his wedding vow to honor her, leaving the blonde duke speechless under her intense gaze.
Uklid sweats nervously as he processes the weight of her words and his duty to respect her wishes.
The couple's intensity leaves the servants pretending they saw nothing, much to Evgenia's sudden embarrassment.
To break the tension, Chibi Evgenia suggests moving the discussion outside to escape the unhealthy dust.
Turning her back, Evgenia leads the way out, telling her husband they are leaving the office for now.
Uklid smiles warmly and follows his wife while the servants watch, completely won over by her regal authority.
As they walk, Evgenia stops and informs her husband that she has something very important to discuss.
Delano suddenly drops to his knees, hailing the Duchess as the true blessing and hope of the entire family. Evgenia is left speechless, her eyes widening in shock at the advisor's dramatic and sudden change of heart.
Delano reflects on his past hardships in the poor north while carrying an impossibly tall stack of paperwork.
His narrative continues, describing how he saw the arrival of Lady Basilian as a daunting new obstacle. Delano initially viewed the black-haired lady with fear, viewing her arrival through the lens of negative rumors.
A flashback shows Delano screaming in terror during his first encounter with the formidable and imposing Duchess.
Everything changed for him after witnessing the intense and heartfelt exchange between the Duke and his new bride.
Back in the present, Delano cries with joy, shouting, "My lady," as his past distrust completely evaporates.
The advisor prostrates himself on the floor,
his dramatic loyalty providing a humorous contrast to the Duchess's confusion.
Delano remains bowed in reverence as the narration describes him as a wise man for recognizing her value.
Full of newfound vigor, a Chibi Delano sparkles with enthusiasm, ready to serve his new mistress. Evgenia puts him to work, and Delano salutes her with a loud, eager cry of, "Yes, ma'am."
Sitting at her desk, Evgenia marvels at how her efficiency reduced a mountain of documents to a single page.
She instructs Delano on the new financial reporting format, aiming to revolutionize the management of the duchy.
Evgenia hands over more tasks to her new assistant, who listens with wide eyes and absolute devotion.
Gazing out the window, the Duchess contemplates her long-term plan to develop the estate and restore its former glory.
She focuses on her work as Delano diligently confirms his readiness to assist with her every command.
Delano eagerly checks if she is listening before loudly reaffirming his total commitment to her service.
Evgenia's eyes narrow as she identifies silver linings amidst the disastrous financial wreckage of House Rudion.
Narrations reveal that the estate possesses valuable mines and territories, promising a recovery once the debt vanishes.
Surveying her massive dowry of gold and jewels, the Duchess plans to liquidate her wealth to save her house. Focused and determined, the black-haired lady studies the ledgers, knowing efficiency is the key to her liquidation strategy.
Delano expresses uncertainty about the logistics, causing the Duchess to pause her work and look up with mild irritation.
Evgenia declares her intention to sell the assets through her personal maid, leaving her advisor looking visibly confused. Reaching for her necklace, Evgenia instinctively begins to call for Anne before realizing her trusted maid isn't there. An empty silhouette marks the maid's absence, leaving the room feeling cold as Yevgenia stares at the traces.
A memory shows Anne making excuses to stay away for 2 days, a request that now seems deeply suspicious.
Chibi Delano radiates newfound energy, saluting his mistress as he promises to handle any mountain of paperwork she provides.
The advisor hesitates for a moment, his expression softening as he looks at the hardworking and regal Duchess. Evgenia clutches her collar, wondering if she will truly get the chance to restore the family's former glory. A series of sharp tock-tock knocks interrupt Delana's gushing praise as someone arrives at the office door.
Uklid enters the office, his blonde hair glowing as the Duchess welcomes her husband as her greatest blessing.
The blonde duke walks toward her desk, reporting that he has finished eating his meal in the dining hall. Uklid looks apologetic, explaining that he ate separately to avoid interrupting her intense and important work schedule. Evgenia stares at him with deep concern, firmly insisting that he must never skip a meal for his health.
In a chibi moment, she gushes internally, finding Uklid's humble and caring nature to be absolutely heart-melting.
Documents clutter the desk as she confirms they should pay the debt interest before the next month's deadline.
Chibi Uklid offers to have dessert sent up, a thoughtful gesture that brings a spark of joy to the room.
Evgenia imagines the blonde children joyfully eating cake, motivated by their adorable presence to push through her exhaustion.
The Duchess stands up, surprising her husband by offering to go herself despite her mountain of unfinished paperwork.
Blushing and embarrassed, Chibi Evgenia struggles to admit she simply wants a happy dessert break with the children. A close-up of Uklid's eyes through his glasses captures his quiet admiration for his wife's sudden change of heart.
Evgenia looks down with a soft, melancholic gaze, reflecting on the heavy responsibilities she has taken upon herself.
Uklid agrees to her request, while the Duchess secretly vows to protect her husband from becoming further exhausted.
The blonde duke blushes and turns away as a rhythmic tock-tock of footsteps echoes through the hall. A brown-haired lady sits in a sunlit parlor, sipping tea with a look of bored entitlement and arrogance. Marianne and Dior watch her nervously as she questions why the Duchess skipped her meal earlier that day.
The woman reflects on the fees paid to house beers, doubting that the new bride can truly help them. Looking out the window, she complains about her stingy father and her desire to have married Uklid herself. Sipping her tea, she maliciously wonders if the Duke and his bride have even managed to consummate their marriage.
A dark, gloomy vision suggests the couple is distant, reinforcing the lady's hope that they don't get along.
She predicts the Duchess will flee within a week, terrifying the children who overhear her cold and dismissive words.
Dior's hand shakes as he draws, his heart breaking at the suggestion that his kind new aunt is leaving.
The young boy sits in a blue-tinted atmosphere of despair, terrified that he might lose his new family member.
Chibi Marianne looks distressed, explaining that the maids took their toys away because they weren't being played with. The brown-haired lady walks away, uncaring of the children's sadness, searching for a way to kill her boredom.
She stops and looks back with a sharp, suspicious glance as something on the floor catches her eye. Dior is startled as she asks about the item, her attention suddenly locked onto one of the discarded toys. A golden teddy bear with a pink ribbon sits on the floor, its eyes shimmering brilliantly in the light.
The brown-haired lady gasps in shock, realizing the bear's eyes are made of genuine and very expensive emeralds.
Evgenia's voice coolly reveals that the doll cost 15 gold, her presence looming behind the stunned and greedy woman.
Horrified by the price, the chibi lady screams in disbelief as she processes the insane wealth the Duchess possesses. She questions how a mere doll could be so expensive, her eyes wide with a mix of shock and envy.
A loud "Kiyaha!" echoes as the woman is caught off guard by the Duchess's silent and sudden arrival.
Evgenia's footsteps click as she notes how incredibly loud the woman. Crossing her arms, the black-haired lady asks if a 15 gold toy is truly worth making such a noisy scene. Evgenia's purple eyes glint with sharp authority as she stares down the greedy relative, asserting her dominance.
Dior and Marianne look up with immense relief as their aunt arrives, her presence washing away their gloomy fears.
A close-up of the black-haired lady's determined gaze reveals her sharp insight into the household's pervasive fear of Amy.
Firmly asserting her authority, the black-haired lady lectures the cowering Lady Beers about maintaining proper character through careful speech.
With a submissive apology, the brown-haired lady nervously presents a plush teddy bear to the Duchess as a peace offering. Stepping into the elegant bedroom, the Duchess accepts the gift and bestows the name Dior upon it before the children. The black-haired lady kneels, offering the plush toy to her young blonde nephew while expressing her relief at his joy. A sharp warning follows as the Duchess tells the blonde boy to guard his belongings against the greedy and shameless. The blonde children stare back in wide-eyed confusion, sensing a deeper, more ominous meaning behind their aunt's sudden gravity. A heavy silence falls over the blonde girl and boy as they process their aunt's unsettling and mysterious counsel. Watching her sister-in-law closely, the brown-haired Lady Beers listens as the Duchess offers to fulfill any of the children's wishes.
With a subtle smirk, the black-haired Duchess announces that her family's powerful trading company will soon expand into the north.
Panic washes over the brown-haired lady as she realizes the devastating impact the Basilian expansion will have on her business. Trembling with fear, the brown-haired lady wonders if her family's company can survive the arrival of such a dominant competitor. Mocking her rival's distress, the black-haired lady feigns innocence while asking if the new trade route isn't a benefit. A sharp sound of teeth grinding is heard as the brown-haired lady seethes with unspoken rage and mounting anxiety.
Claiming sudden urgency, the brown-haired lady beats a hasty retreat while the chibi Duchess dismisses her with a knowing look.
A hurried "Hodadak" echoes as the brown-haired lady flees, leaving the Duchess to observe her desperate departure with cold satisfaction.
Time passes quietly within the grand manor as the afternoon sun begins to shift across the ornate, sunlit interior.
The room fills with a happy wagyu wagyu sound as the blonde children eagerly devour slices of rich chocolate cake.
Sipping her tea, the black-haired lady observes the children, noting with quiet concern that they seem far too thin.
The Duchess contemplates the lack of servants present to assist the children, adding to her growing list of household grievances.
Clad in a sharp suit, the black-haired woman reflects bitterly on the cruelty of family members who wear deceptive masks.
Turning back, the blonde children exchange a hesitant glance before confirming the truth of their aunt's daily and intrusive presence. Offering a rare, soft smile, the black-haired lady reassures her niece that she is always available to help her. The blonde girl stares up in wonder, clearly moved by her aunt's unexpected and genuine show of support. A rhythmic tuck of heels sounds as the Duchess walks through the hall, her mind racing with lingering suspicions. Pushing open a heavy door with a bellcock sound, the Duchess suspects there is more to the relationship with House Beers. Anne and the brown-haired man greet the Duchess warmly, welcoming her home after her long and taxing afternoon. The tawny-haired maid notices her lady's heavy mood, earning the Duchess's secret admiration for her sharp and attentive intuition. Recalling the family ledgers, the black-haired lady explains to Anne how House Rudion has been paying suspicious distribution fees to Lady Beers. Looking contemplative, the Duchess notes that the exorbitant fees being paid for transporting goods to the north are entirely unjustifiable. A vision of Uklid's late brother appears, suggesting that a forced and unfair agreement may have been struck years ago. Rubbing her chin thoughtfully, the tawny-haired maid agrees that there is definitely a deep-seated problem within the household's finances.
In a playful chibi moment, the two women conspire over the suspicious records, determined to uncover the truth behind the hidden deals.
Shadows of the past reveal that Uklid's brother married the Count's daughter shortly after the suspicious financial deals were made. Gripping her arms tightly, the Duchess resolves that the opening of her family's trading branch will finally end this extortion. Radiant with fury, the black-haired lady seethes over the years of manipulation her new family has endured.
When the maid suggests involving Cyanel, the black-haired lady wonders why her brother's name is suddenly being brought up.
Anne points out that Sionel's expertise in auditing unfair economic activities makes him the perfect ally to crush the monopoly. Standing amidst the towering bookshelves, the Duchess learns that it may still be possible to legally punish the Beers family. The Duchess questions why House Rudion never used the law to fight back, suspecting a much deeper and darker secret. Remembering Uklid's reluctance to visit the capital, the black-haired Duchess wonders if the imperial family bears a grudge against his house. A chilling realization dawns on the black-haired lady as she considers the possibility of high-level imperial hostility toward her husband. Clenching her fists, the tawny-haired maid prepares to deliver another shocking piece of information to her increasingly troubled mistress. Shadows of whispering nobles suggest that the Emperor's quiet hatred for the North is a well-known secret among the elite. A sudden Miamchit flinch halts the conversation as the chibi maid hesitates to reveal an even more scandalous event. Hushing the Duchess, the tawny-haired maid nervously admits to exaggerating slightly, while the brown-haired man watches the pair with concern. Looking somber, the brown-haired man reveals the alarming discovery that there isn't a single full knight left in the order. The revelation continues as the man explains that the commander's post remains vacant, leaving the castle's defense in total disarray. Shadows of squires illustrate the dire situation, where the Duke himself must personally manage the castle's meager and overextended guard. Evgenia is surprised to learn from the brown-haired man that Uklid handles staff training personally. The black-haired Duchess falls into deep thought,
reflecting on the unconventional management of the estate's servants. Narration describes Rudion Castle as a magic fortress, built with the heartfelt devotion of the First Lord.
Standing in the sunlit office, the advisor explains that even long-term staff cannot operate the castle's hidden defenses. Evgenia gestures for the man and her brown-haired maid to approach, leaving them both visibly confused. In a secretive chibi moment, Evgenia whispers her tactical plans for Gressel while her subordinates listen intently.
The Duchess's hidden instructions spark a sudden fire of devotion, leaving her bewildered by their explosive excitement. The brown-haired maid enthusiastically promises to contact Black, leaving the black-haired Duchess completely baffled by the terminology.
When Anne mentions gold, Evgenia's confusion deepens as she realizes she has no idea what these codenames represent.
Resting on her chaise, Evgenia reflects on hiring mercenaries and appointing Gressel as the new commander of the knights.
Gressel stands tall at the head of a loyal group of knights, ready to fulfill the Duchess's commands.
Seated at her desk, Evgenia meticulously audits distribution records from House Beers to uncover any potential contractual flaws. A chibi Evgenia feels a surge of gratitude toward House Basilian, acknowledging their unexpected and vital support.
The Duchess watches with a nervous sweat drop as Anne's intense loyalty continues to manifest in overly dramatic displays.
Anne notices Evgenia's stern expression and quickly backpedals, promising to focus only on contacting Black for now.
Alone with her thoughts, the Duchess stares into tuberculosis, still haunted by the mysterious meaning of Black. Turning with a graceful movement, Evgenia's long black hair flows as she prepares for her evening routine.
At the edge of a luxurious bath, Anne suggests her mistress should have rested longer after her grueling work.
Evgenia praises Anne for her diligence in organizing the bedroom, noting it took the dedicated maid 2 full days. A chibi Anne eagerly offers to show off her handiwork, and a hesitant Evgenia agrees to follow. Approaching a large grandfather clock, the Duchess questions why Anne has led her to such an ordinary object. With a rhythmic druru sound, Anne skillfully turns the clock hands backward, triggering a hidden mechanism within the room.
A quick tock-tock knock on the adjacent wardrobe confirms the secret sequence is nearly complete.
A hidden door slides open with a low rumble, leaving Evgenia shocked while a beaming Anne reveals the secret. The maid invites her lady to enter the secret chamber, her eyes sparkling with pride at the hidden surprise. Inside, a dazzling shalala brilliance reveals a secret boutique overflowing with magnificent dresses and priceless jewels. Evgenia is stunned by the secret room's luxury, worrying about the implications of such a space within Rudion Castle.
Realizing her past self must have ordered this, a chibi Duchess laughs nervously while Anne watches with confusion.
A sharp gasp escapes Evgenia as she spots a familiar item among the hidden treasures of the secret vault. Her mind races as she identifies a pouch with the exact same pattern as the one given to Rehart. Shimmering pearls and golden chains frame the mysterious pouch, linking her past actions to this hidden collection. Memories of the pink-haired Rehart and Anne's mention of Black coalesce, sending a chill down Yevgenia's spine. With a soft rustling basak sound, hands open the pouch to reveal a glowing, radiant gem of immense power. Evgenia smiles with quiet satisfaction, knowing she provided Rehart with more resources than he had in the original timeline. A dark, heavy atmosphere surrounds her thoughts as she wonders if Rehart has already seized control of the underworld. The scene shifts to the imposing Black Assassination Guild headquarters, illuminated by the cold light of a crescent moon. Alarms blare as a tada sound echoes. A blood-splattered, pink-haired youth fights his way through the guild's outer defenses. With a fierce pang sound, the pink-haired boy moves with supernatural speed, effortlessly cutting down the guild's elite guards.
Watching from a window, a scruffy man notes with awe that the intruder disarmed his men without causing serious harm.
Rehart stands amidst the fallen guards, his sheer skill leaving the seasoned assassins feeling completely helpless and outmatched. The scruffy guild member realizes their master used this attack to keep them sharp and test their newfound readiness.
A loud Bielkak sound announces the intrusion as a door is kicked open, signaling the end of the skirmish.
Rehart walks through the doorway with a steady Jobuk step, his expression calm despite the blood on his face. The scruffy man asks if the intruder is Lord Rehart, and the pink-haired youth confirms his identity with cold authority.
Dropping to one knee with a chuck sound, the scruffy man pledges his eternal loyalty to Rehart, their new master.
Standing tall before his new subordinates, Rehart prepares to lead the guild under his absolute and ruthless command.
But chilling, sick grin spreads across Rehart's face as he asks when he can finally reunite with his mistress. A sudden Byunchuk start awakens Evgenia, who sits up in bed with wide eyes and a racing heart.
With a gentle jack of birds chirping outside, the Duchess stares into the dawn, shaken by her vivid premonition. A soft sarak sound follows as her gown ruffles, the quiet morning air offering no answers to her growing unease.
Evgenia realizes the black her maid mentioned refers to the deadly assassination guild once led by pink-haired Rehart.
The black-haired Duchess ponders if during the connection between her plans and the guild's name is merely a coincidence.
While resting on her bed, Evgenia is approached by Anne and the advisor as the evening's revelations continue.
A sudden realization strikes Evgenia, her purple eyes widening with a mix of suspicion and mounting internal alarm.
The brown-haired advisor sternly warns Anne to speak more respectfully of the powerful figure she calls Black.
Anne laughs off the warning, proudly asserting that everyone in the secret organization has always been loyal to Evgenia.
Evgenia reels in shock as she discovers her past self meticulously organized these powerful forces long before her arrival. While the advisor offers a chibi thumbs up of admiration, the black-haired Duchess fears she has accidentally opened Pandora's box.
A quiet, sunlit hallway reflects Evgenia's simple desire to lead a peaceful life alongside her husband, Uklid.
Walking with grace, the Duchess resolves to keep her dangerous secrets hidden to protect her fragile domestic happiness.
Reaching for a door, Evgenia seeks a moment of solace to calm her racing heart after the night's discoveries.
Entering the library, she plans to bond with the children by discussing her quiet and hard-working husband. Evgenia pauses, her sharp eyes noticing a grandfather clock placed awkwardly between the library's massive, ornate bookshelves.
Suspecting another hidden mechanism, her hand moves toward the clock face as she wonders what secret lies within.
The library stands silent and still as the black-haired lady prepares to unravel yet another mystery of the estate. A faint click sounds as Evgenia successfully triggers the mechanism, realizing her intuition about the room was correct. Stunned by the hidden passage's reveal, the Duchess stares into the darkness, questioning what more her past self concealed.
A dark secret passage appears.
Evgenia stares in utter shock.
She remains frozen at the entrance of the secret stairwell, her mouth agape in total disbelief. A soft, airy rustle sounds as her dress settles.
Despite her initial trepidation, Evgenia's curiosity wins out, and she decides to explore the mysterious, blue-lit magic fortress of a secret room. She begins her descent down the dark stone steps, wondering what secrets might be waiting for her at the bottom. A steady tap sounds with each step.
As she walks, she wonders if she will find priceless treasures or if the path is merely an ordinary secret escape route. She passes through a hallway filled with glowing blue flora, noting that noble estates often have hidden paths for emergency exits. Evgenia stops mid-step, her expression becoming alert and suspicious as she hears a faint sound ahead.
A heavy metal door looms.
A soft sliding rustle sounds as she prepares to reach for the heavy door.
Evgenia listens intently as voices from beyond the door discuss low-born con artists and bloodlines.
A soft, airy sound punctuates the cruel words. The brown-haired woman shouts at the two blonde children, blaming them for not conveying her message to the Duke.
She continues her verbal assault, claiming that the duchy would be better off without the Duke's current wife or the trading company.
The woman grabs the boy's hand tightly, demanding the children tell the Duke to either remove the company or keep paying distribution fees.
She cruelly reminds the weeping boy that his dead father made a promise that they must uphold.
Evgenia tells the child to inform her immediately if a situation like today happens again.
The girl remembers the lady's kindness, which gives her the strength to finally say no to her aunt's demands.
The young girl screams her refusal, tearfully declaring that she will never say what the woman wants her to say to her uncle.
The brown-haired woman is taken aback by the child's sudden and fierce defiance.
She sneers at the girl, warning her not to get arrogant just because the lady of the house showed her a bit of kindness.
The cruel woman laughs mockingly. She tells the children that once the Duke and his wife know their true identity, they will no longer be treated like human beings or family.
A sudden, thunderous boom sounds as a hand slams into the wall, casting a terrifying shadow over the brown-haired woman.
Evgenia seizes the woman by her hair, her face dark with a terrifyingly calm intensity that leaves the woman gasping in fear.
With a cold, piercing gaze, Evgenia asks the woman if she has been tormenting the children this entire time. Evgenia asks if the woman has been acting like this all along while a steady tap sounds.
A heavy thud sounds as the brown-haired woman collapses onto the floor.
Evgenia stands tall over the fallen woman, her expression one of utter disdain as she demands to know exactly how long this has been happening.
The brown-haired woman stammers out a weak, desperate defense, claiming things are not as they appear. Evgenia leans in close, gripping the woman's dress as she delivers a silent, crushing threat. A heavy, rhythmic boom sounds in the room. The brown-haired woman realizes she has no reason to be scared and asks what it has to do with Evgenia anyway.
In a final, desperate act, the woman tries to deflect the blame by accusing Evgenia of only caring about another man while being married to the Duke.
Evgenia demands to know who started the rumors about her and another man while gripping Amy. The brown-haired woman argues that her status as the children's aunt and the Duchess remains unchanged. Evgenia demands to know if the children were physically harmed while forcefully holding Amy by the collar.
A shaky Dior admits that the brown-haired woman pinched them frequently as Evgenia's eyes sharpen in anger.
Evgenia is horrified to learn about the physical abuse the children endured. Evgenia decides against immediate physical retaliation for the sake of the children's well-being.
A sudden, heavy thud echoes through the room as tension peaks. A sharp, terrified scream rings out from the core.
Evgenia orders the cruel woman to leave immediately with a terrifying, cold authority.
The brown-haired woman flees the room in a desperate, terrified panic.
Evgenia gently comforts the trembling children and tells them they are safe now. The children look up at Evgenia with lingering fear and hesitation. The blonde girl tearfully pleads with Evgenia to keep their secret from her uncle. Evgenia stoops down to listen as the blonde girl begins a difficult explanation.
The blonde girl reveals that their mother was not actually a member of the Beers family.
Evgenia listens intently as the children's true lineage is revealed.
The girl explains that Uklid's brother knowingly married a commoner despite the social consequences.
The father accepted a crushing financial deal with Count Beers to hide his wife's commoner status.
The blonde girl asks if their lack of noble blood means they can no longer call her aunt. Evgenia firmly maintains that she is their aunt regardless of the secrets she just heard. The blonde girl stares in total disbelief at Evgenia's unwavering acceptance.
Evgenia assures the children that the blackmailers are not their true family.
Evgenia explains that their formal registration in House Rudion makes them legitimate nobles despite the rumors.
She gazes at the children with her calm and reassuring smile.
The blonde girl tearfully argues that their presence is merely a burden to their uncle. Evgenia is baffled by the children's belief that they are unwanted burdens. Evgenia tells the children she will be disappointed if they truly believe they are a burden.
The blonde boy reveals they tried their best to please their uncle while rejecting Amy's influence.
The children confess to suppressing their own feelings to accommodate Amy's demands for their uncle's attention.
She listens in silence to the children's heartbreaking confessions.
A reminder that the Duke prioritizes spending mealtime with the children.
The scene shifts to a memory of the Duke sharing a meal with the blonde children.
Evgenia emphasizes that their uncle always thinks of them and rushes home whenever possible.
The children listen as Evgenia prepares to explain the truth of their uncle's affection. A warm memory shows the blonde man holding the two happy children in his arms. Tears well up in the blonde girl's eyes as she processes the kindness. Evgenia pulls both sobbing children into a warm and protective embrace. Evgenia vows to make the brown-haired woman pay for attempting to ruin her peaceful life. The sun shines brightly over the grand and ornate castle. Evgenia asks the children if they have finally found some peace of mind. The two blonde children look up, still emotional but visibly relieved.
Evgenia asks the children if they still wish to hide the truth from their uncle.
She waits patiently for their answer while keeping them close. The children finally agree to her suggestion, while Evgenia finds their reactions incredibly adorable.
A sudden concerned knock sounds at the door as someone asks if the lady is safe. The door begins to open as the blonde boy lets out a small hiccup.
A single, decisive footstep enters Guru.
The Duke stops in his tracks, stunned by the emotional scene unfolding before him. The maid gasps in shock as she spots the two children in their disheveled state.
The maid explains that Amy's frantic departure led her to believe something terrible had occurred.
Uklid and the maid look on with deep concern as the Duke notes that even the normally composed Lady Marianne is crying, urgently asking if everyone is all right and if the children have done something wrong.
From off-screen, the children insist they aren't crying because of their hat.
The children look on with sorrow.
Uklid pauses, looking somewhat skeptical as he reflects on the children's sudden outburst. Behind the scenes, Evgenia notes that the children's fervent denials are only deepening the misunderstanding, though she finally understands the cause of their distress.
Uklid gently pats their blonde hats.
Uklid gives orders to a maid, requesting a wet cloth, ointment for wounds, and bandages, to which she obediently complies.
Evgenia wonders why he mentioned wounds, recalling the children said Lady Beers hadn't physically struck them.
She worries if there are injuries she failed to notice.
Evgenia reaches out to Marianne and Dior to ask if they are truly okay, but the girl assures her she is fine.
Uklid takes Evgenia's hand, telling her to relax so she doesn't make her own wound worse, leaving her stunned. Evgenia realizes she likely got hurt while bursting out of the wardrobe earlier.
A visible wound marks her wrist.
The children watch their aunt closely.
He stops to examine her hand. Evgenia is mentally reeling, find it insane that Uklid is personally bandaging her hand.
Uklid carefully bandages her injured hand.
Evgenia reflects on how she ended up keeping the secret passage from Uklid, noting that he seems to be deliberately avoiding asking further questions.
Sunlight bathes the magnificent stone castle.
Evgenia narrates that since Amy stopped visiting the castle entirely, everyone began speculating that she had driven the woman away and scolded the children.
Rumors spread throughout the entire castle.
Evgenia sighs as she looks at her paperwork, noting that since she transmigrated into a villainess, she is well accustomed to such misunderstandings.
She is surprised to find Euclid's aide, Delano, reporting to her office, wondering why he wouldn't just report directly to the Duke.
Evgenia is baffled to find Uklid sitting in her office drinking tea so naturally, though she admits she doesn't really mind.
An enthusiastic Delano announces that he has confirmed the trading company that will sell her dowry, describing the place as incredible.
Evgenia asks for the name of the company, and Delano reveals it is called Gold.
Delano explains that despite being established less than 10 years ago, the company has considerable influence, opening new trade routes and yielding huge profits.
Evgenia realizes that the gold Anne mentioned previously was actually the name of the trading company.
Delano excitedly mentions that the Vice Guildmaster is a spirited person who sees this deal as a great opportunity to expand their network to the north.
Evgenia is surprised to learn that the Vice Guildmaster requested to meet with her directly to discuss the matter further.
Delano adds that if things go well, the gold trading company might even set up shop in the north.
Evgenia notices Uklid has been staring at her the entire time and wonders if he has something to say.
Uklid gazes at her, blushing slightly.
Intricate jewelry adorns his noble attire.
Evgenia asks the Duke if he has something to say, and he awkwardly mentions that the Magic Tower has contacted them. A memory of the silver-haired Tower Lord appears as Uklid explains the tower feels bad for giving her a used carriage and feels they failed their customer.
Uklid explains they offered a brand new magic carriage in exchange for the old one, but Delano privately doubts the Tower Lord cares about customer trust.
Evgenia tells them to say it's fine since they promised there would be no takebacks, and Delano agrees to convey her wishes.
Someone calls for Dior outside. Hearing a knock, Evgenia invites the visitors to come in. Marianne and Dior burst into the room, happily announcing it's lunchtime and inviting their aunt and uncle to eat together.
Evgenia is amused that the children came to her office first before visiting Uklid, and she happily agrees to go. Marianne looks away with a blush.
Marianne thinks to herself that while she couldn't work up the courage for 5 days, she will definitely tell her uncle the truth today.
Uklid watches the children with affection.
During an overhead view of the meal, Evgenia insists she is fine now while the children continue to offer her food.
Evgenia smiles as she thinks about how the children have been waiting on her for days, reiterating that her hand wound is just a scratch.
Despite her protests, Uklid and the children insist she say "ah" as they offer her pieces of food.
The servant's arrival is announced with a sudden, rapid tap-a-tap sound as they call out for his grace. The maid announces that Count Beers has arrived and wishes to see them.
Uklid stares ahead with pensive focus.
Evgenia remains calm beside nervous Dior.
Marianne resolves to speak her truth.
Evgenia informs Uklid that she will confront Count Beers first and asks him to finish his meal.
Uklid expresses his confusion and insists he can handle the matter himself without her getting involved.
Evgenia insists on meeting the man first as a menacing dark energy surrounds her determination to see him.
Evgenia prompts the children to speak as Uklid looks toward them with sudden surprise. A soft squeeze sounds as Dior nervously clutches his vest and tentatively addresses his uncle.
Marianne looks up with firm resolve. Evgenia reflects on the conversation she believes is happening between Marianne and Uklid.
A sudden, quick tap-a-tap sounds as Evgenia pushes aside her worries to focus on her meeting with Count Beers.
Evgenia walks through the hallway while mentally cheering for Marianne to find her courage.
Delano intercepts Evgenia in the hall and is shocked that the Duke is not accompanying her.
Evgenia confirms she is going alone and asks Delano why he looks so uncharacteristically happy. Delano explains his joy by recounting how annoying he finds the Count's monthly demands for money.
Delano gleefully contrasts Uklid's polite manner with Evgenia's naturally intimidating presence, eager to see the Count's reaction.
Evgenia questions Delano about the Count's character and whether he usually behaves in a superior manner.
Evgenia's expression hardens as she listens to descriptions of the Count's insufferable and disrespectful attitude toward the Duke. Delano trembles as Evgenia's presence becomes terrifyingly heavy while she learns more about the Count's behavior. A sharp crack sounds as Evgenia's aura flares with a decision to personally teach the Count a lesson.
Firm hands push open drawing room doors.
Evgenia enters with cold, regal authority.
A sudden, bright flash surprises Evgenia as she notes the light reflecting off the Count's bald head.
Count Beers bows and introduces himself as the head of a large northern trading company.
Evgenia reflects on the old saying that a rotten personality leads to baldness.
Evgenia is baffled by the merchant's poor awareness of her displeasure as he tries to flatter her. Evgenia realizes that the Count is completely oblivious to recent events as he presents her with a gift.
The Count shows off a large painting on the table, describing it as an incredibly rare item.
Evgenia's shoe slips with sharp snap. A sudden, loud clatter sounds as Evgenia stumbles forward and collides with the furniture.
Evgenia vents her frustration over her recurring shoe troubles while trying to regain her balance.
Count Beers stands frozen in shock as he is suddenly drenched in liquid and adorned with a flower.
Evgenia is shocked to see that she accidentally knocked over a vase directly onto the Count's painting.
Delano and the maid are awestruck, believing they are witnessing a calculated display of the Duchess's legendary cruelty.
The Count panics and identifies the ruined gift as the famous masterpiece Sunrise by Diego Verzin.
Evgenia's eyes narrow as she recognizes the name of the painting. Evgenia questions the Count's claims while he desperately tries to salvage the wet artwork with a cloth.
Evgenia reveals that the authentic Sunrise painting was actually included in her own dowry.
Count Beers is paralyzed with fear as Delano confirms that the real painting already belongs to the Duchess.
Evgenia points out that her father would never give her a forgery, proving the Count's gift is a fake.
The Count pathetically claims he was also a victim of deception to save face after his plan fails.
Evgenia laughs at the irony of a con artist being conned before accusing the Count of habitually selling forgeries.
Evgenia notes that his previous schemes only worked because he had an accomplice within the house.
Evgenia stares down the trembling Count and questions if his attempt to deceive her was born of sheer arrogance. Uklid's voice rings out as he enters the room and calls for his lady. Evgenia calls out to the Duke as he enters with a radiant presence.
Uklid asks about the children while Evgenia tries to explain the current situation in the room.
Uklid watches with a serious gaze.
Evgenia acknowledges Uklid's words with a quiet and respectful confirmation.
Evgenia is struck by sudden realization.
Uklid offers a radiant, peaceful smile while surrounded by blooming white flowers.
Evgenia glances back as she walks through a grand sunlit corridor.
Uklid peers through a doorway with a stern expression while an unseen person expresses nervous surprise. A flashback begins 30 minutes earlier as Uklid questions Marianne's lack of trust in him regarding her secrets.
Marianne tearfully explains her fear of being hated and her desire to protect him from further hardship.
The girl continues her confession while mentioning her regret over their father's abandonment.
Uklid immediately and forcefully rejects her self-deprecating thoughts.
His attention is taken by a sudden flinch as he reflects on his brother's actions, leaving the family vulnerable.
Uklid questions his own conduct and impact in front of the young children.
He resolves to shield them from the dark truth and any thoughts of vengeance.
Despite his brother's faults, Uklid finds himself unable to join the world in blaming him.
Feeling personally responsible for the family's tragedy, he kneels to give the children a warm hug and an apology.
Uklid reassures Marianne and Dior that they are his precious family and that their bond will never change.
The children embrace him with joyful laughter, mentioning that their aunt's words were correct.
Dior joyfully recalls their aunt's promise that they would always be precious to their uncle. A memory shows Evgenia comforting the sobbing children with a warm hug. Evgenia's voice continues the memory, encouraging them to be glad their real family is different from the Beers family.
The children express their immense happiness at being part of Uklid's family.
Marianne and Dior celebrate their newfound peace while holding a bouquet of white roses.
Uklid smiles warmly, feeling deeply comforted by the children's innocent joy.
Back in the present, a sudden boom sounds as Count Beers grovels, claiming he only followed the late Duke's orders. A chilling aura surrounds Uklid as he questions the Count about the financial arrangements regarding his sister-in-law.
Uklid continues his interrogation, asking if the children were told to prioritize the Count's interests. His fury intensifies as he challenges the notion that his sister-in-law owes the Count any gratitude.
Uklid lets out a heavy, frustrated sigh. He makes a sudden reach for the Count, demanding to know who else shares the secret information. The Count remains defiant in his mind, plotting to use his own methods against the Duke.
Uklid repeats his demand for the identities of those who know the truth.
He looms over the trembling man, ordering him to answer quickly.
Count Beers remains on his knees, surrounded by an atmosphere of intense pressure.
The Count secretively considers using his knowledge as leverage against Uklid.
An official from the Imperial Treasury suddenly interrupts by bursting into the drawing room. The Count reacts with outrage at the intrusion before being informed of a serious legal problem.
Canis Huen introduces himself and his team of Treasury officials to the gathered nobles.
The official announces an investigation into the Beers Trading Company for illicit wealth and trade law violations. Canis apologizes for the interruption, explaining they tracked the Count directly to the castle. Uklid remains cold and suspicious, questioning the official's lack of protocol in his home. Canis is visibly flustered as he explains that the Duchess herself granted them entry.
Uklid acknowledges the explanation with a calm, analytical expression.
Outside the castle gates, a servant prepares to notify the lord of the Imperial Palace's arrival. The castle staff is startled by Evgenia's sudden and perfectly timed appearance. Evgenia offers a calm greeting while Canis formally introduces himself to the Duchess. Canis delivers a message from his superior, Chianel Basilian, who is busy working at a rapid topping pace. After being told he will investigate thoroughly because she filed the report, Evgenia urges him to begin his work. A slow creak sounds as the Duchess orders the butler to open the grand doors for the officials. A quiet murmur follows the officials as they enter the castle under the watchful eyes of the family.
Marianne asks if their grandfather is being arrested, and Evgenia confirms he must be punished for his misdeeds.
Evgenia offers silent support to the children as they watch the corrupt Count's downfall. The children acknowledge their aunt's explanation with somber obedience. Evgenia remains pensive, knowing the Count will likely attempt to expose the family's secrets to save himself. A quiet moment of reflection begins as the scene shifts.
Evgenia instructs Anne to take the children to the library, and the blonde maid politely agrees.
A sudden, sharp click sounds as Evgenia reflects on her future family and the need to protect Marianne and Dior from the Count's history. A sudden, loud puff sounds as Evgenia's chibi form blushes intensely while scolding herself for thinking about future children so soon.
Uklid watches his wife with a calm and deeply thoughtful expression. Evgenia realizes she should apologize to Uklid for independently contacting the capital and causing a stir.
A voice calls out to the couple, announcing that a report is ready to be delivered.
Canis Huen beams with a bright and joyful smile.
Behind dungeon bars, Count Beers stands as Canis explains the investigation into the trading company is nearly finished and they are moving to the Count's estate. Canis thanks the Duke and Duchess for their cooperation, while Uklid tells him to think nothing of it. Evgenia mentions the con attempt involving a painting, shocking the brown-haired official.
Evgenia details the forgery of Diego Verzen's work, wondering if the Count was actually trying to sell it to her. Canis is appalled by the Count's actions and vows to ensure he pays the full price for his crimes.
Evgenia promises to inform Canis's brother of the excellent work he has done.
Canis reacts with humble surprise, feeling that such a reward is unnecessary.
A sudden, sharp flinch sounds as Eugenia is startled by Uklid's presence behind her.
Evgenia apologizes for making a big deal of the situation, explaining she noticed financial irregularities before hearing the children's story.
Uklid gently asks his lady to please raise her head.
A soft, quick tap sounds as a finger rests against a chin.
Euclid offers a warm, radiant smile amidst a flurry of white roses.
Evgenia thanks Uklid sincerely for listening carefully to the children's concerns.
The Duke and Duchess both blush in their chibi forms as a romantic energy fills the air. Evgenia remains serious, vowing that the Count will not go down alone while assuring Uklid he should not worry.
Uklid smiles warmly and tells his lady to leave everything to him and not to worry herself.
Evgenia watches him with a worried and curious gaze, wondering about his plans.
A firm, warm squeeze sounds as Uklid takes Evgenia's hand in his.
A sudden bright glow sounds as Evgenia blushes, thinking to herself that his charming behavior is like cheating.
Uklid notices her red face and asks if she is feeling unwell.
Chibi Evgenia panics internally, unable to refuse anything when her husband looks at her with such kindness.
A sudden angry shout sounds in the dungeon as Count Beers blames his daughter for their downfall.
Amy argues back that the Count is being punished for breaking the law, as the Imperial investigator stated.
A heavy, slow step sounds as Amy expresses her shame over her father trying to con the Duchess with a forgery. Uklid watches the prisoners through the bars with a cold and piercing gaze.
A sharp metallic clank sounds as Count Beers begs for mercy, claiming the fake painting was an honest mistake after years of service.
Amy insists her father is lying and that he alone is responsible for the things said to the children.
A sudden low grin sounds as the Count reminds Uklid that the children are publicly his grandchildren and share his intentions.
Uklid stands in the dark hallway and demands to know who else knows the truth about his brother and sister-in-law.
A sharp dismissive huff sounds as Amy claims that currently only the two of them share the secret.
Count Beers threatens to expose the children's commoner blood and their father's betrayal to the entire empire.
A soft, magical hum sounds as Uklid's hand glows, confirming the truth of their statements. A sudden, sharp gasp sounds as the Count is terrified by the dark aura surrounding the Duke. Amy trembles in fear as a shadow falls over her, calling out to her father.
A sudden heavy flinch sounds as Uklid addresses Lady Beers from behind the bars.
Uklid scolds them for telling the children things they should never have known.
A soft, dark rustle sounds as Uklid stares with a cold gaze, stating he has no intention of making things easy for them.
Uklid warns her that if she must resent someone, she should resent him instead of the innocent children.